Hello again, friends. And you are our friends, and welcome back to another edition of Jim Cornette's Drive Thru right here on another winter's day. I'm your host, the great Brian Last. We have lots of questions, maybe a little bit of review on the side, but lots and lots and lots of questions for this man, the leader of the cult of Cornette, the, I guess, retiring post office ninja, Mr. Jim Cornette.
Can you speak up, Brian? I can't. As Norman Frederick Charles III, the former royal kangaroo, used to say, I can't hear you. I've got an ear infection. Can you speak up?
I was pretty loud there, I think.
Yeah, well, it's grating and annoying, maybe. I don't know about loud. No, I can't. The problem is I'm trying to do the yawn thing and pop my ear. I don't know. Maybe I've popped my ear already. You know, it's cold outside.
That was a good transition. Yes, I know it's cold outside.
We're going to tie all these loose ends together and say, don't make me laugh hard. I'm going to strain my milk, as Mama Cornette used to say, in addition to my other issues. I got a twinge down here in my crotch. And no, we had the snow and the ice and the inclement weather, but it's been above freezing down here for a couple of days now, the last 2 days, and at night it's not, but it melts during the day, but still because there was so much ice and it was frozen so solidly, it still melts, especially in the shady areas and the non-traveled pathways are still, and it's making it colder than it is because there's still ice on the ground, even though it's warmer in the air. And I go out to take Harley to piss, and we've talked about her bowel habits and her urinary, customs that she goes through. But every time I take her out to piss, it's still cold, and it makes my nose run. Right? I get the runny nose. I know what you're going to say. Well, you better catch it. So when I come back in and I unwrap everything from all of the wrappings that I put on myself, because I'm old now, my blood circulation, it's just sitting still, apparently. Every once in a while, somebody would come and shake me up like a bottle of ketchup to get my blood moving. But anyway, I was rushing up here to put my apparatus on, the headphones that you recommended long ago that I purchased, and the microphone that I'm using here so that we can have the best audio of any podcast on the planet.
That's right.
What we sound like is up for debate, but the goddamn whatever it is, we sound as good on this thing as we're going to sound because the audio on the show is great. Anyway, so I realize after I sit down here and I put my headset on, I'm about to call you, I've got to blow my nose because I mentioned before my nose is running. And see, this is where it's cold outside, tied into this whole thing, where we're back to where I started now. And I blew my nose, and these headphones that I'm wearing that you recommended that I purchase have created a vacuum seal around my ears. And when I blew my nose, my right ear, which is the bad one anyway, that's why I turned the left side of my head. Do you see like I'm doing now? Don't you see? Every time I'm trying to listen to somebody, I turn the left side of my head to them because the right ear's fucked from when I got hit by lightning 30 years ago. And that's an old story. We're not going to go down that path now. And I got the tinnitus in this one from the daggum pyro in TNA's broom closet they used to shoot television in. So now it's gone in my head there, that it go in your head when you do that, when you blow your nose and the ear is vapor locked because of your expensive headset equipment. And now I can't hear out of one side. I'm leaning sideways toward the side that I can hear out of, even though I'm just here alone in my home, except for the lovely Harley Quinn who's not putting any of this over. So you're going to need to speak up. She's the one that started this mess, but you're the one that recommended these. I wonder if there's a goddamn class action suit. It's not even time for the Stephen P. New Spot, but newlawoffice.com, 888-692-8084. I'm wondering if there's some type of class action suit that I can hit you and the makers of these headphones with for causing me to potentially explode my eardrum into bits and pieces all in the inner canal of my ear by blowing my nose.
Highly unlikely, but let me ask you this. Have you thought about loosening the headphones?
Well,
why are they so tight on your head that they're forming a vacuum seal?
You don't. Don't you see, man? You don't understand that. If
mine are nice and loose, and I'm having a good time over here.
You're free balling over there. What I'm saying to you is, I wouldn't have known that they were vacuum sealed until I blew my nose, because normally they felt fine. It's not that they're clamped down tightly on my head. It's that the inner periphery of these, the foam that's around these, they're noise canceling type of situation, and it has created an airtight seal around the beautiful contours of my lobes. I've got beautiful contoured lobes there, but the contour around them has been sealed to outside noise and interference by the style of these headphones.
There's the Twilight Zone episode that never made the air. My beautiful lobes.
My lobes. You didn't see that one Twilight Zone episode where everybody in the world had identical ears except for that one person? And he was constantly trying. I won't even go into that now. I want to
save that story for Raycon.
Yeah, there you go. And I'll tell you another thing, boy. You can pick up some interesting transmissions on those Raycon wireless earbuds if you're late at night.
No, you can't.
From the Canamets. the inner ship communication back and forth. They're going to land anytime, and they're going to be serving man. I'm telling you, those Canamets, but you can hear them talking to each other on the Raycon. That's something else Brian Kendrick believes. You can hear the Canamets talking about how to best to land and invade the earth on the Raycon wireless earbuds.
This is not an official spot for Raycon, ladies and gentlemen. This is parody of a spot for Raycon.
Like Kendrick is a parody of a fucking conspiracy theorist. Have you seen some people on Twitter? Still, Cornette was defending him when they talked about what he was. I asked one guy, I said, how many times did I have to call this guy that fucking moron for you to notice that I wasn't defending him? I was simply making the observation that there's nobody in the world. I know people believe in some of these conspiracy theories. He went down the checklist and found all that he could and just blurted it out like shit on a shingle. And I said, you couldn't possibly believe in all that stuff and have the ability to find your way home at night. And people say, oh, he's defending him. Oh, my God. I want to thank everyone before we go any further for jumping in on the St. Valentine's Day Massa cameos. That we lined them up against the wall, and there you go. And we're going to be shooting those and filling those this week, Wednesday and Thursday. Since after you get past doing about 40 or 50 in the same day, it does get a little burdensome. So we're going to split that up.
Is there anything special you're going to do for Valentine's Day? A special outfit or any kind of prop?
Oh, yeah, I keep a goddamn Cupid outfit around the castle.
I don't know anyone in my life who has owned as many pink suits as you. I can't think of one other person who's owned any.
I went through all the pink a long time ago. Back when I was in the pink.
Do you still have a pink suit that could fit you?
No, that's the thing. I'm going to say that pink suit has been gone since the Attitude Era, because I had it. I had it in WCW, so I had it late 80s, 87-ish. And the thing is, I went through a couple of different pairs of the pants, because with my knee braces underneath, taking bumps, splitting seams, scuffing, etc. And the jacket, and finally, that's the one that I wore on my debut on Raw, where me and Bobby Heenan gave each other the big old hug.
That's right, yeah.
And Smoky Mountain, I wore it on big shows, and God almighty, Smoky Mountain was hard on clothes for me because we were rolling around all over the place. And I'm going to say that I finally, before there was any market for my used suits and ring-worn stuff, and it was stained and scuffed and torn, and it probably met its demise by the time I moved out of Connecticut, but to come back to Kentucky, which would have been 20-something years ago.
All right. And
does that satisfy you?
Well, I guess my point is, even if you had it, you wouldn't be able to wear it because it was for a bigger man. You're now.
I was about to say I was a big man in those days, Brian Last. No, I was actually I was probably, depending on, because once again the jacket, you had more room to play with than the pants. I didn't have to button it. But I was anywhere from during those eras from 25 to 45 pounds heavier than I am now. So there you go.
Do you have a suit that could fit you right now? Like really well?
What, you mean like just regular suits?
Right now, yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
A couple of years ago, I was doing the commentary thing where they're not the pink suits and the phosphorescent shit, but nice clothing.
But you're in better shape now than you were then. That's my point.
Well, actually, remember, it was back in 2018. 2017, I was still fat. But then I got disgusted with myself again and went on a diet. By 2018, I was 210 or below, and I've stayed that. So the last time I bought new clothing, I was probably about 10 or 15 pounds, maybe heavier than I am now. Why are you so fucking poking into my goddamn personal affairs here, my appearance?
It's my show. It's my show.
Oh, I forgot about that. Well, you know about my website? Have you heard about JimCornette.com?
I have.
The miraculous situation that is developing this weekend, Saturday, February 12th, when the Cornette's Collectibles store is going to reopen. And I feel like I'm having another baby again. Except this time, we're not going to, we don't have any action figures up right now, folks. No reason to get jumpy. But we have the products that you've all been waiting for, that all those people buying action figures and slamming me have prevented you from getting: the T-shirts, the DVDs, the autographed pictures, the Cult of Cornette membership certificates, the behind the curtain autographed graphic novels, graphic novels, the graphic novel that's highly prized now. You know, I've got the only graphic novel in wrestling, behind the curtain, and now with faster shipping at JimCornette.com, we hope. We have every reason to believe this is going to be the case. As we've been talking about the past several weeks, I'm still going to be signing everything by hand and personalizing all the things that get personalized. But Hotchkiss Featherbottom, the creator of this space-age, state-of-the-art website, and his uncle and Aunt Fanny and Uncle Felcher are going to be handling the packing and shipping to ensure that I just got too big for my britches, as Mama Cornette would say. She used to say a lot of things. And I was trying to do this all myself, and it was getting ridiculous. And so now we hope with faster shipping, we've got a routine laid out, and the website's even going to be emailing people and telling them that their orders are on the way and how to find them and all that good stuff that I could never figure out. It's all going to be in the hands of the Featherbottoms once that I sign everything and bless. I'm going to be like Pope Cornette. I'm going to sign it. I'm going to bless it. I'm going to kiss it. I'm going to hand it, and they're going to they're going to put the shipping on and send it on its way. It's going to be like a well-oiled Swiss watch, except I checked. Featherbottom is not a Swiss name.
You'll be just like the Pope, and when your underlings do something wrong, you'll say, it was all them. I had no idea. I was over here.
But at first, I'll engage in an active cover-up as much as possible, and then when all else fails, I'll blame them. But anyway, so that's Saturday, February 12th at JimCornette.com, folks. And then, as we've mentioned, we'll walk before we can crawl, That'll be a good. We'll start out walking. By the time the customers are finished with us, we'll be crawling. We'll crawl before we can walk. We'll open up there. I encourage everybody to get any of those items over the next few weeks, and then we're going to be talking some action figure news and other stuff. But that's what's going on there. I got an email. Can I read an email on your show, or are you going to be territorial about this thing? It's to both of us, really.
Well, no one can read an email like you. I'd love to hear it.
See, now you're buttering me up.
You're very good at reading emails. You print them out. No, I don't know anyone else that prints them out.
Well, how the fuck am I supposed to keep them in a file and know that I'm supposed to see? I carry this file around with me from show to show. Once that we do a show and I've read something, then I discard it, and then I keep other stuff until the next show. Right here in my little manila file that I got, and I carry it around. How you supposed to carry around a fucking computer screen in a manila file?
Well, you don't need a manila file, although there is a manila folder you can get for your iPad or something. There's no reason. What
iPad?
You can get an iPad and do all these things instead of a computer. You could just do it on an iPad very easily.
Why would I get shit to do something I'm already doing?
If you didn't want to carry the manila folder, you could get an iPad or a computer.
I'd feel naked without my manila folders. I don't just have one manila. I have manila folders. This one's for the show, and the other thing is for merchandise. The other thing is for all of my various other projects. And that's what I carry from room to room with me during the course of the day, along with the list of things that I'm going to try to address that day, and the list of people that I'm supposed to call back on the phone that I never get to because I'm too busy addressing the other things.
And then you rip everything up and throw it away.
After I'm done, well, not all of it. No, I rip the notes up of the things that I'm supposed to do when I'm done and I've crossed everything off, or I've advanced something to next week's notes. Then I'll rip those up. But I keep a lot of paperwork. You're going to find later on in the show, I got something I found again. Do you know also, you'll enjoy this being the capitalist that you are. One of the things that I've been trying to do over the last month since Christmas, since we haven't been sending out merchandise, is besides the recording schedule here, I've been trying to clean up my filing in the office, all the stacks of papers and emails and notes and memos and things I've jotted down and multiple projects and things I want to work on. And I have completed my tax return file drawer. I have every tax return that I have filed since 1982 in order with a separator in between for 40 years, all in the same drawer. I'm waiting for you to praise me.
It's amazing. I wish that there was a way to make Castle Cornette a museum after your passing. And
a museum?
Yeah, and you can get some kind of person that could be a Jim Cornette historian that could say, and here's where he kept all of his taxes.
Here's where you can see him at the museum.
That's right.
All right, anyway, I got an email. I mentioned that before.
Oh, yeah.
It sent me down the Primrose Path. Actually, this is to both of us. It's to the Drive Thru. Because, and I won't mention last names, but it's from Johnny from Long Island, and it's about his twin brother, Stephen. And he's, hi, Jim. He means you too. He sent it to the Drive Thru. But he's, my twin brother, Stephen, has been hospitalized since December 23rd. He missed Christmas with our family after having deadly sepsis and pneumonia twice. And a series of bad weeks led him to be on a ventilator for 10 days. While our family was scared for the worst. The hospital finally let me see him this week. I guess so he's been in there 6 weeks or whatever, but due to the COVID. And the doctors warned me that he might not respond. He has a feeding tube in, so he can't speak much, and I didn't know what to say to him. But we're both big fans of the podcast, so I played him this week's Drive Thru to try and ease his mind. And as we were listening, my brother started humming the Drive Thru theme song. I couldn't believe it. We prayed for weeks for some signs of life. At this moment, I knew he was still fighting, and ever since he's been improving every day. And so the entire family thanks you and me, Brian, you and Brian. He even said your name right there at the end. But Johnny and Steven from Long Island, and we're going to have a package in the mail to you guys because I've got back to him since I saw this email. But okay, I know that, you know, it's been proven that when people are in comas or you know, not responsive or whatever, music somehow reaches them. You know, it connects somehow, but I'd like to think it was just the content of our program. Wouldn't you, Brian? And possibly the soothing force of our voices that was something that he could connect with and bring him back to this side.
Well, from what I understand, the intro really uplifted everyone's spirits, but things took a turn for the worse when you started singing like Mussolini later in the show, and they had to get the doctors.
Oh, wait a minute. That's what happened when he flatlined later in the afternoon. Then a clear, you know, but okay.
But get well soon.
Yes, Stephen especially. Get well, Stephen. And thank you guys for listening. Oh, and also congratulations, Tessa Williams and Tyler Smith on their upcoming wedding on March 5th in Kansas. And I was alerted to this happening. Well, it was in all the papers out there, but the newspapers in Kansas only have 4 pages. But also they sent me an invitation, and I just picked up the mail and I'm Tyler and Tessa. I appreciate it. I'm sorry I can't be in Kansas March 5th. I'm going to be stuck here at the desk, disseminating entertainment throughout the world, but congratulations, you guys.
Yeah, you're not getting a gift. Nice try.
Hey, I will say Tessa is an incredible housekeeper. Oh, but I'll tell you what, she's the best housekeeper in the world. You're darn tootin'. She's been married 4 times before, kept the house every time.
All right.
Anyway.
Is this still my show? Whose show is this? Can I give it away? It's your show.
Can you give it away? Well, at least put it up on the market and attempt to sell the goddamn thing before we just fucking fold our tent. I'm just checking some things off. See, I may be fit. Would you like to find out what I got what I found rather when I was going through some of my files in the office here? All kinds of things, but one in specific I saved out because I've talked about this thing and I haven't been able to lay my hands on it. Guess what it is? I've referred to this numerous times on the programs.
It's a physical item. Is it something with paperwork or is it something that's an actual...
It's paperwork.
I don't know. What is it?
Do you remember when I've told you the story about being exceptionally embarrassed and mortified at a certain segment on TNA Wrestling back in the 2000s that not only Mike Tenay had to read, but that we were in the room with the Spike TV representative when this was read, and it jumped the shark, as they say, and I saved this whole format from the show, and for years I had it sitting on top of it, and then it got put in a stack somewhere, and I haven't seen it, but now this is from wait a minute, hold on here.
This is the actual format.
It's the actual format of the show, yeah. From July 9th, 2009, TNA Impact Show 441. We taped it. Well, it was tape date 6/23 through 25. So it was one of those mass taping deals. But I've told this story several times, and just recently somebody referred to it, and we referred to it when somebody was asking one of the questions or whatever, but formats of wrestling shows have gotten ridiculous and out of control. And we've seen the one that was leaked. Was it a Raw script, as they said on the internet here a while back, just recently?
Yeah, a few WWE scripts recently leaked in the last couple of years.
Don't use that word. That's for the marks. Marks use the word scripts, including the marks that work in the companies. But the formats of TV wrestling shows have gotten ridiculous. And since the start of television up through literally the Attitude Era, the formats of the shows that were disseminated to the crew and the production staff and, you know, whatever the case, and shown to the talent if it needed to be, and that, everybody worked off of, were 1 and 2 page formats. It was, if you had an hour television program, then depending on whatever format you were using in whatever territory, it was either 6 segments and 5 breaks or 7 segments and 6 breaks. Otherwise, it was an hour show, which was actually either 58:30 or sometimes 58:58 or whatever that the particular station wanted or called for. If it was a 2-hour program like the Clash of Champions on TBS or the 6:05 Saturday night program, then it was 2 pages because it was 13 segments and fucking 12 breaks, whatever. You get my drift, right? And the format literally read: open 30 seconds, desk or ringside, announcers, intro, billboard show, 1 minute, music, entrance, match, music on out. Whoever the winner is gets their music played again, to VTR interview or whatever. And that was so everybody knew what the flow of the show was and what was going where and whose music to play when. Because that's, except actually music on out didn't tip you. Only that was later on in a smaller meeting when you would give a finish to the music guy and the producer and the director, and they'd know which guy's music to play. But the reason it was done that way is because, number one, you see the flow of the show, you see what's coming on or what's coming up, but you don't get bogged down trying to look down at a page of typewritten fucking just endless copy and text and notes and script, right? If you're a producer or director in the truck, you don't need to see all that goddamn ridiculous paragraphs of verbiage from the interviews. Or if you're, just the wrestlers looking to see where you're coming up, you just need to see it instantly, right? Also, it didn't tip people off if they were left laying around that the whole thing was bogus and pre-written ahead of time. There weren't all the details, right? Nice and easy. And then verbally, the people that needed to know more information were told. Well, then, during the Attitude Era, when they started filtering the writers in and everybody got too big for their britches, they started trying to justify their writing positions by writing endless writing. And the format started getting bigger, and they started including more detail. And finally, it ended up this, what did I say? I've turned the page here. July 9th, 2009 format for the 2-hour TNA Impact program on Spike TV at that time is 17 pages.
Wow.
Because the one person in the world with the most verbal effluvia coming out of his mouth and his typewriter, and the most in need of justifying his position to himself and outsiders as being in charge of the writing, was in charge of this. And so anyway, I remember when we just talked about on the program, it was one of the drive-thrus because somebody sent the question in.
Mike Tenay.
About Mike Tenay's. Well, I've talked about his format reading voice, right? Well, this is my classic fucking representation of that. What we would do, and I apologize if I'm doing the setup here. People have heard this before, but bear with me because you'll get some new information here. But what we would do in TNA at the tapings in Orlando is that you would get there about 11 o'clock in the morning and you'd have the production meeting. And once the production meeting was over, that's where all the shows that were going to be shot that night, you'd read through the formats in front of everybody. The director, Dave Sahadi or Tim Walbert, the producer, Keith Mitchell, Shitstain was there on behalf of Creative, as well as Dutch Mantell and Jeff Jarrett, the announcers, Mike Tenay and Don West, myself and whoever the agents were, if it was Savio Vega, if it was Road Dogg, if whoever the agents were, other people in the television production, several of the other office people, Jeremy Borash doing the interviews. It's a small room. There's about 25 or 30 people packed into this thing. And
when do you actually get the format?
When you walk in the room, somebody, Rudy Charles, the referee, good old Rudy Charles is at the copier, and he's copying off the formats because I'm always early, right? So if I would walk in 15 minutes early, you can smell the copy toner in the air. I love the smell of toner in the morning. And they've, deal them off like cards in front of everybody, and you start making notes. And the idea is that you go down through the format or through the show from top to bottom, and anybody whose department or who is, if you're the producer of a certain match or segment, if you've got a question about it, that's your time to ask. Or if the sound guy is not clear on music, that's his to raise his hand. Or if somebody in their department, the announcers don't understand a point, wait a minute, should we make this point or that point? That's your time to ask it, right? Well, that's the way it works in a normal fucking television wrestling production meeting. But a lot of these meetings, except for the one or two of the producers who knew that they weren't going to get their heads bitten off or yelled at, or, anybody rolling their eyes for prolonging this agony because they had a legitimate question. And the main production people would ask something, but normally everybody just wanted this shit to be over with because of the way that it had to be done in this particular way. And I will give you an example here in a second. The detail that had to be gone into at the start. And obviously I would be the one, and Jeff got a kick out of this, I'd be the one asking most of the questions, sometimes on other people's behalf when nothing was fucking clear. So to make sure that we didn't fuck up later on. And that's why Shitstain would look sideways at me, and Dutch would giggle, and Jeff would smile a little bit, and Mike Tenay would give me the eye like, yeah, I'm really reading this. But Mike Tenay was the one that was nominated, as we've mentioned, to read through the entire format. That's why these meetings took so fucking long. And finally, as years went on, he started going on some of the pre-tapes. Well, folks, you see the verbiage here. And get to the end. But because Shitstain was in charge of writing these formats, Mick Foley versus Jeff Jarrett versus Kurt Angle gets 2/3 of a page, right? For the TNA World Title triple threat fucking match that I was the producer of. That was going to go somewhere around 12 minutes on television with this goddamn finish. Now I've got notes that I can't even understand. But that got about 2/3. The same amount of space was given to a 2-minute pre-tape. This was another one of Shitstain's brilliant ideas to put entertainment on this program. Abyss, who at one time could have been a money-drawing monster in the wrestling business, but did so much of this stuff in TNA that he was reduced to a goddamn cinder on more than one occasion, literally. Abyss was being psychoanalyzed by Stevie Richards. Brian, you remember this. Well, you might not remember watching it, but you remember me talking about it. Stevie Richards, the ECW wrestler, is the WWF wrestler that everybody'd seen on TV for the previous 10 years, suddenly had become a psychoanalyst, and he's working on Abyss. You remember me talking about this?
Yeah, I never saw this, but I remember you talking about it.
Well, you're one of the lucky, how many people are in the world? 6 billion? You're one of the lucky 5,998,750,000 people that didn't see this. They're doing these weekly Here's another thing. We have a national wrestling cable television program on Spike, right? And we have a lot of talent. I just mentioned Kurt Angle and Jeff Jarrett and Mick Foley and all this stuff, but we're still doing multiple shows in a soundstage at a theme park in Orlando with not a large technical crew and office crew, and they have people wasting their time building this fucking doctor's office, a semblance of an analyst's office. And they hired somebody to be a goddamn receptionist. And they have a crew spending endless time while Shitstain stands there like he thinks he's goddamn Francis Ford Kukula. at trying to direct this shit. And it just bogged everything down. But the bigger problem I had was, there's poor Mike Tenay in this meeting in front that I've just described, in front of all these people in this packed room, including the representative from Spike Television, and I've gone blank on what his fucking name was. Nobody would know it anyway, except if you read the credits sometimes of the UFC shows. They had credit. He was on their credits. But in those days, Spike would send someone from the network to any of their first run programming. I'm not talking movies, obviously not TV reruns, but the UFC or TNA wrestling or whatever was being shot for their network new content. They would send a representative who would go to the taping, to the production meeting during the day. And then I don't know if he did this at UFC events, but the guy would sit in the production meeting. Then it's in Orlando next to the fucking theme parks. He'd go play golf all day. And allegedly he would come back at night and watch the show to make sure that we're not trying to air the fucking Tijuana Donkey Show on his network. So he report back to the muckety mucks. I never saw where he was during the show because I was busy, the truck or the ring or the fucking locker room or whatever. He was allegedly there. But he's the guy that also did the UFC shoots. And I had to think that he had to be going back to those, because at the time UFC was as hot as it, was getting there on television. He had to be going back and going, Jesus Christ, these fucking lunatics that run the wrestling program and this idiot that writes this show and they read this shit, right? It was embarrassing. I would sink down in my seat. So I want to read you, Brian, word for word, what Shitstain put in a television format for a wrestling program on Spike TV that was going to be seen at this time by, what were the numbers then? 1.2 to 1.5 million people. It was doing better than AEW is now, that everybody's remarking, oh my gosh, what an audience. And this was just old TNA. Of course, WWE was doing 4 times that, but he put this in a format, willingly had it read by poor Mike Tenay, the beleaguered announcer of this program, in front of everybody in the company, including the Spike TV representative. Are you ready?
Yeah, I want to hear this.
Okay. Pre-tape package, Abyss Dr. Stevie vignette, producer, Vince Russo. And these are bullet points. There's like a little dot right next to these lines because it's obviously he's laid this all out like he's Hitchcock, figuring out Vertigo, right? Abyss is waiting in the reception area of Dr. Stevie's office. He is pacing and pulling out his hair. The receptionist offers him some coffee to relax. Abyss drinks it. Coffee to relax. Abyss takes a seat. Dr. Stevie walks in. Abyss pops up, grabs Dr. Stevie by the throat. Dr. Stevie talks him down. Dr. Stevie, quote, relax, Abyss. I set up this meeting to resolve our issues, nothing more. I didn't do anything to Lauren last week. That was another one of the girls that I don't remember what supposedly, I guess, Abyss was George Steele and she was Elizabeth, whatever the fuck.
Yeah, it sounds like the coffee didn't help.
Yeah, but moving back to the quotes here. Nothing. I didn't even move a hair on her head. She was never in any harm. I did what I did to get you here. Now, please, after 10 years, just hear me out, just for a second. Abyss, let's go. Dr. Stevie, let's go in my office. Abyss walks in. Dr. Stevie makes eye contact with the receptionist and then follows him in. Inside the office, Dr. Stevie. Look, Abyss, this thing has gotten way out of line. No, I've gotten way out of line. The truth is that maybe I started becoming a little agitated with Lauren when I saw her getting in the way of our doctor-patient relationship. She was getting in your head, Chris. See, now it's a shoot. And she was telling you the wrong things, especially those things concerning me. I mean, who is she to judge, Chris? How long have you known her? What's the matter, Chris? Is something wrong? You look like something is wrong. Oh, no. Don't tell me that the drugs have kicked in already.
What?
I thought I had at least another 5 minutes of babble I had to go through. You see, Chris, what I did was I ordered my receptionist to drop some blank in your coffee before I got here.
Does it say blank in the format?
It doesn't say blank. It is a blank. He wrote this leaving a blank like somebody was going to find some real goddamn shit in the Amazonian rainforest that the fucking pygmies use instead of curare to put on their blow darts that was going to have this effect. And I brought up blank. I said, do we need to call the local medical facility to find out what this is? Well, we were going to look up anyway, I'm continuing.
Cosby was still free. You could have called him.
See, nobody knew about it then. If only, that going back to the script, I ordered my receptionist to drop some blank in your coffee before I got here. Do you know what blank is, Chris? Well, it's a drug that cuts off the blood circulation to every muscle in your body, even your throat muscles, your voice box. It disables you, Chris, completely, almost turning you to jello. Oh, you can hear me and you can understand everything I'm saying, but you just have no control over your muscles. So all you can do is sit there and do nothing. Do nothing when I do this, Chris. Dr. Stevie slaps Abyss. And do nothing when I do this. He hits Abyss again. And this. And again. Dr. Stevie violently attacks Abyss until he throws the cameraman out of the office and we can see no more.
Wow.
And he couldn't even come up with an imaginary name of the imaginary drug. That's what killed me the most. He left it for everybody to see that, like, we're going to look this up. We're going to consult with somebody with a fucking pharmaceutical background, and Road Dogg was asleep at this time.
He took the drug.
Background.
He took whatever Dr. Stevie had.
No, I love Road Dogg. I love Road Dogg. I'm just joshing with you. But anyway, the point is, this was read in front of the Spike TV representative, and then they did something highly approximating this and put it on the television program, which is another reason that this motherfucker ought to be stood up like a fucking firing squad victim and blindfolded.
And you say the Spike representative was there. In the end, that's what, correct me if I'm wrong, it's been a while. That's what cost TNA their deal with Spike, was that they insisted you can't have him around anymore, and they were still...
Again, and then people were disputing that. Oh, it had nothing to do with it. Oh, no. This kind of shit is what years later they were laboring under the assumption that there was no more shit stain in TNA. And when they were alerted to the fact that Dixie had lied and that she was secretly employing him as a consultant for whatever the fuck, that was potentially the straw, as they say, that broke the network's back on all the other shit that they were already complaining about. And then they found out that they're lying to him on top of that. But yeah, the guy was sitting, and this is one of the most egregious, but not by any length, the only ridiculous. I've talked about Shark Boy in the fucking fish tank that he lived in, but this is the kind of shit that, and here's another thing, because another reason why that formats for wrestling shows didn't go into this much detail traditionally until this era, and the writers got out of control and got too full of themselves and enjoying the smell of their own farts, is also because this is before all this shit is shot. He would write shit that people were going to say in the ring live. He would write shit that was going to be, people were going to be saying in pre-tapes. He would write stuff, the bullet points, even though he would not have anything to do whatsoever, as I've mentioned many times, with producing a match or with producing even an interview segment if it had physicality. He'd talk about the verbiage, but he wouldn't do anything related. So you had to go in and spell him on live interviews because he wasn't intelligent enough or didn't know enough about the business to be able to tell the guys how to do the physical part. So it was almost like, stop, stunt man, and somebody who knew wrestling would come in and go over the fucking fight. But the reason why you didn't put down all this much detail is because then all the guys, when you would go to them and you would show them, they'd go. I mean, Stevie and Abyss did this because they were under the mesmerization of Shitstain. But a lot of the guys, especially the ones I had to deal with, because I was working with all the main event guys in their matches, would inevitably roll their eyes and go, what the fuck? You want me to say what? You want me to do what? And then either it would be changed. Sometimes even Shitstain would change his own shit when he'd get in front of the boys and they'd have a better idea. But then you would have announcers assuming that things had been said that weren't said, and they'd pitch to or react to stuff in pre-tape that had been changed somehow. Or you'd have people in the truck confused with what they were watching unfold in the ring in a match or an in-ring interview, because when it wasn't that way in the meeting, well, that's because the guys that were involved weren't going to fucking do that stupid shit. So they came up with something instead that was more palatable. And then we all had to go to Jeff and say, we're going to do this. Okay, yeah, do that. That makes a lot more sense. So anyway, this is the kind of shit that he was fucking foisting off on not only the fans, but the people in the company that had to sit through this kind of thing. More questions. I heard you starting to break in a minute ago.
Well, just in terms of what the actual segment was and how inappropriate it was, if you just break it down so that it's not tons and tons of dialogue to just being a sentence or two, Dr. Stevie drugs and incapacitates Abyss, starts beating him up, and then kicks the cameraman out.
Yes.
The cameraman who witnessed all of this.
Yes. But when we come back... Well, when we come back, we're going to a match with Matt Morgan and Kevin Nash against Christopher Daniels and AJ Styles. So I guess fucking Abyss is just fucked.
Do you return to that room and to Abyss on the show?
Hold on. I'll look through here. Oh, Lauren was the girl interviewer that somehow Stevie was inappropriate to. Wait a minute. The back car. Hold on. Oh. Well, see, no, because they come back after Abyss is drugged and mugged by his therapist. They go to that tag match I was talking about, where Christopher Daniels is severely injured. His ankle is severely injured. And then they go to the break and they come back, and Sting and Samoa Joe are in the back. Lauren has a camera crew, and she's going to try to get a word with Joe, who has his back to us and is covered by a black towel. But the black car pulls up. As the car stops, Samoa Joe goes around to the passenger side. He reaches in and starts strangling the driver. But it's not Samoa Joe. It's Sting posing as Samoa Joe with a towel over his head because they're so similar.
Come on, I did not think that's where you were going to go.
And just before Sting can pull the driver out, Joe, the real Samoa Joe, attacks from behind, getting big heat on Sting. But then security comes into the scene, led by Mike Davis.
Mike Davis?
Do you know who that is?
Wait, when you say Mike Davis, you mean the wrestler Mike Davis?
Well, one of them.
I mean, Rock and Roll RPM Mike Davis?
No, the other one, Mike Davis, Bugsy McGraw.
Oh, no shit. Get the fuck out of here.
Bugsy McGraw lived in Florida, and when he came by, and he was so big and impressive looking even then, they've hired him, and this lasted, I don't know how many weeks, and I don't know what happened, but they hired him to be the head of security. And so basically, again, I want to remind everybody, Abyss has been drugged and raped by his therapist. Now, drugged and beaten. I'm sorry, not raped. Well, we don't know. The camera was kicked out. And then we had a tag team match where in the very next segment, where Christopher Daniels' ankle was severely injured. But we come back after the break.
Well, hold on. If all of his muscles stop working, why wouldn't he be dead?
Well, it's because of the blank. Doesn't do that to you, Brian. But we come back after Christopher Daniels is crippled. And Sting is posing as Samoa Joe, who's strangling the limo driver until the real Samoa Joe comes out and gets big heat on Sting. And then Bugsy McGraw comes out and pulls him apart. And then we go, as I mentioned, to Mick Foley versus Jeff Jarrett versus Kurt Angle. And the announcers note that AJ Styles has driven Christopher Daniels to the hospital during that match. But we don't really know what the fuck's going on with, we hold on here, because now I've got a lot of notes on what actually happened, and I can't read them because they're bullet points, and this is almost 15 years ago. But what was supposed to happen, according to the bullet points that were written by Shitstain, and that's why there's none of this in my notes. But the second that Kurt gets Mick in a submission, Eric Young, the referee, calls for the bell. Jeff Jarrett goes after Eric. Jeff and Eric fight around the impact zone. In the meantime, Kurt is getting more heat on Mick as the main event Mafia comes to the ring carrying a roll of barbed wire. Samoa Joe is carrying Sting's bat and Kurt's belt. The main event Mafia throw Mick's fallen body in the barbed wire in the middle of the ring. Kurt begins laying into Mick wrapped in the barbed wire with Sting's baseball bat. Then there's just one line bullet point. Heat. He's wrapped in the barbed wire with the baseball bat. He's got the belt. He's carrying the barb. It's heat. And then here comes. God damn it. Security out. MEM lays them. No, well, first Big Rocco and Sally Boy, who was two of the local guys down there, are really big guys that works as an independent team, and they was trying to use them as some security, but personalities there for a while. Main Event Mafia lays them out. Then security, led by Mike Davis, he just start down the ramp armed with billy clubs. So
billy clubs?
They're sending out 7 or 8 people led by Bugsy McGraw with billy clubs off hot before they get to the ring. So apparently what instead we did, because these are my notes after we set, because Jeff is in this fucking match, right? And Kurt Angle, so as I recall, I sat down with Mick and Jeff and Kurt, and here are my notes. Coming out of the break, the match has started the previous segment. Up on action, heat on Jeff, comeback, stroke. Eric Young, slow count. Mick saves. Jeff stops Mick, gets guitar. Eric Young stops it. Shove Eric. Socko on Jeff. Eric ditches guitar. Kurt Angle slams Mick. 2 count, Jeff save. Figure 4, Kurt Angle. Mick elbow drops Jeff Jarrett. Mick covered Jeff. Kurt Angle gets ankle lock on Mick. Face shot of Mick. That's a note for, he don't want to tap, but he's in the ankle lock saying no. As soon as we get the face shot of Mick saying no, Eric Young calls for the bell and announces the winner. Eric was on the goddamn take. That was a match involving Kurt Angle, Mick Foley, and Jeff Jarrett, main event talent. They fiddled with the guitar. Kurt's using his angle slam and his ankle lock. It's every man for himself, and there's a crooked referee that's in the pocket. We have rolls of barbed wire, security with billy clubs, people carrying, and also there wasn't Sting and Samoa Joe because, goddamn, if we last recall, they should be in fucking local Orlando jail by now because they're having a fucking brawl out in the parking lot. He's strangling limo drivers. That's this show would change constantly because Goof would just have diarrhea all over the paper. And then when it came to actually doing it and talking people into doing these things, it changed drastically. But no, to answer your original question, I guess Abyss was just fucked because we didn't hear from him for the rest of the program.
How many of these TNA formats do you still have?
How many shows was I at? However many that was. Hold on, I'm trying to.
We can have fun with this. We can have a lot of fun with this.
Because I have, and see, the thing is, the formats were better and easier to understand back in the old days, but I have my WCW booking committee formats. I don't know, to be honest, I've got to go back, and I'm sure I don't have all the WWF formats because think about, I was there for 3 years and we were doing, every week we'd do Raw, we'd do 2 or 3 syndications. That was before SmackDown. It would be in the thousands of formats, and I wasn't that interested. But I have all of my OVW formats, all my Ring of Honor formats for anything that I was involved in writing. The TNA formats that I saved that I couldn't believe. Well, as a matter of fact, well, hold on. The earlier segment 1, Mick Foley and Jeff Jarrett live interview, is an entire page of verbiage. He had another rule that the pre-tapes all had to be 2 minutes because we weren't giving the pre-tapes enough time to fully develop the stories, so that he was having 3-minute 6-man tag matches in the ring, but pre-tapes had to go 2 minutes.
We always hear about how him and Jeff were so close. Let me hear how he wrote for Jeff. Do you have anything he wrote for Jeff?
Well, I don't know how this came off. Yeah, I've got, Jesus Christ, it'll take me the rest of the program to read this. I don't know what was actually said on this program, but this is what he wanted to be said. Mick's in the ring. Mick says, Jeff, I said I'd be back this week, and here I am. We can go round and round, but the truth is that TNA isn't designed to have 2 officers making the decisions, especially when those 2 officers have 2 totally different agendas. So, Jeff, let tonight be the night that one of us steps down from our position in TNA. Because Mick had become another one of the authority figures at this point. This was after I was an authority figure. Then they decided to let everybody know that Jeff was the founder of TNA. This is toward the bloom was July 2009. The bloom was fixing to come off the rose. This may have been the last taping that Jeff made, now that I think about it. Anyway, TNA founder music and entrance. And he also would have to, in parentheses, put which side they were coming out, the baby face or the heel side. Anyway, Jeff says, Mick, I have to ask you, do you ever for 1 second consider anything you say, or don't you? Look, you and I are competitors, and I totally understand that once you were back in the fire, you just wanted to revel in that glory one more time. I understand that, Mick. I've been there. It's the nature of the beast. We're wrestlers. That's what we do. So in the process, you have proven to the entire world that you still had what brought you to the dance in the first place. You became the TNA World Heavyweight Champion. Should that have been the end of the story? And by the way, I'm putting a lot more oomph in this than Mike Tenay would do when he would read in his monotone voice, because he couldn't be accused of judging anything. He couldn't.
How would it sound? You keep talking about his monotone voice, but how would it sound? Do it.
Okay. Should that have been the end of the story? Probably. But for whatever reason, you felt that wasn't enough. You had to put TNA in severe danger in order to get a rematch for that title. Mick, listen, you have nothing to prove, not to me. Because if Shitstain had heard the verbal eye rolls, if he put the inflection in when he was disgusted with something, it'd have been an issue. Anyway, you had to put TNA in severe danger in order to get a rematch for the title. Mick, listen, you have nothing to prove. Not to me, not these people, certainly not to Kurt. We'll all be in your corner at Victory Road, and regardless of what happens, you will always be a true legend in all our minds. But Mick, you need to start thinking. You need to remember what happens. Or you need to remember why you see the print is so small you can't follow the line. Why you came to TNA. You need to consider all our young athletes and the families that depend on each and every one of them. That's why I brought you here in the first place. That was our goal. But I'll tell you right now, if the main event mafia walks away with all the titles at Victory Road, I'm not so sure we can overcome that mountain. Mick, what I'm saying is that we can fix this, but we can only do it together. And they go back and forth. I can't even read this anymore. Jeff shakes Mick's hand. Mick's on the team, but Jeff says, why wait to turn this around at Victory Road? Why don't we start tonight? What do you have in mind? How about together you and I book a match? Maybe Kurt Angle in action. Sounds great. Mind if I tweak it? Be my guest. How about Kurt Angle versus Jeff Jarrett? Jeff says, sounds good. But I'll tweak it. How about Kurt Angle, Jeff Jarrett, and Mick Foley in a three-way? And Mick Foley, I smell ratings, Jeff. But in the event of fairness, I say we let Kurt Angle name a special referee. Jeff says, sounds good, as long as that referee isn't a member of the Main Event Mafia or Matt Morgan. And then they shake hands again. And then it turns out that Eric Young fucks the whole thing up. Oh, but it just... And on and on and on.
I don't know if you would, because it was a different time and things were different. Do you have any Mid-South formats from when you were there?
No, we didn't get them.
That's what I was thinking. Okay, that's why I said
no, fuck you. There was, here's another thing. There was I made off with a couple of show sheets from the ring announcers, and obviously Watts would send out memos from time to time, and I have a few of those, but the format was for the booker, the two announcers, the director in the truck, and whoever was sitting at the monitor in the locker room. And otherwise, there was a format for the show taped by the door that you had to walk out. And it was your job. And this was not just Mid-South. This was every other wrestling promotion in the world. It was your job to go when you got there, you put to TV, you put your bags down, you go over to look at the wall, and you figure out where you're at, who you're working with, and et cetera. So then, a lot of guys would just sit there and like bumps on a log and wait for somebody to tell them something. But that's the first thing I always did for the team, for the midnight. And if we were doing more than one television show, I would see how many times we're working. And also, are we coming up early? Then I'm going to need to, because in those days, whoever the booker was, usually at TV, wherever you were, the locker rooms were all together. Except if you were shooting on location in an arena, then it was a different situation. But for most territory TVs, and the booker would come and tell everybody what they were fucking doing verbally. Like I said, you didn't get formats. You certainly didn't get your interview written down. But at the same time, I would want to, if we were on early especially, I'd want to be proactive and go find whoever the booker was and ask ahead of time, hey, since we've got two things or we're on early, and they would generally know what I was doing. They would give me the gist of the thing so I could fill the boys in a little bit, and then they'd have an official get together with everybody involved in our segment besides the Midnight Express. A lot of guys wouldn't do that, but I like to be prepared. Also, on some of those longer TVs, if it was possible to exit out the back door, if you weren't on till way late, you had time to set up your social evening in the parking lot. But no, guys didn't get formats because then they would leave them laying around. And even though there wasn't who's going to win the match or anything indicating that it's a predetermined program, you didn't want your paperwork floating around. So, but that's another reason, as I said, why the formats in those days only had the match, who was being interviewed, we go to the announcer desk, whatever. If it's the same thing could be said about boxing or the UFC or any sport or whatever. There was nothing on the format to indicate that there was any advanced knowledge of what was going to go on the program on anybody's part.
I have another question I want to ask you about the format, but first I want to ask you about your healthy breakfast. What did you have for breakfast today, Jim?
Well, I'll tell you what I had for breakfast. That's the same thing that I have for breakfast every time I have breakfast because you just can't beat it. It's like a broken drum or a sore dick. You just can't beat the magic spoon, folks. And it's a new year. If you've got the New Year's resolution going, or if you've maybe postponed the New Year's resolution until Valentine's Day, whatever the case, if you want to eat healthier, if you want to save time in your morning routine, you can do all these things with Magic Spoon because it's not only the best tasting cereal in the world, it's also free of all the sugar and the junk and the carbs that you can't eat anymore now that you're an adult. And also, it's quick. Just throw some in a bowl, pour some milk on it, or you can throw some in a bowl and just eat it like trail mix, or you can actually just take the box with you in the car on the way to work and just sit there, drive with your left hand, stick your right hand on top of the box and eat the shit like popcorn. That'll work too. Just whatever you do, Two things. Number one, make sure you wipe your hand off before you scratch your nose or before you drive, or elsewise, if the cops pull you over for driving with one hand and you've scratched your nose and you got all the fine sugary goodness that doesn't have real sugar in it on your nose, they'll think you're coked to the gills.
Why are we going down this road, quite literally and figuratively, now that I say that?
Because you don't want to do that. You want to drive safely.
Just enjoy your magic spoon in a regular, safe environment.
Yes.
Stress regular, someplace you would regularly be, like your kitchen.
Well, you're regularly in your car. Just don't let the cops see you driving with one hand while that other hand is stuck in a box of Magic Spoon. The flavors alone. Cocoa, fruity, frosted, peanut butter, blueberry, cinnamon, cookies and cream, and maple waffle. And boy, if you mix all those together, I've been made to understand that it's somewhat like the mushrooms that grow under turds in the desert. If you mix all these flavors together, you'll see magical rainbows and unicorns. But you can try it for yourself. Build your own custom box. The custom bundles are available at Magic Spoon, and of course, all the various flavors and types and kinds, categories of the cereal have 0 grams of sugar, 13 to 14 grams of protein, only 4 net grams of carbs in each serving, only 140 calories per serving. So if you want to, you can have 2 servings. Just be a double fister. Stick both hands in the box of Magic Spoon and just pull up handfuls of cereal and shove it in your fucking face. Just watch out. Don't get anything in your eyes. And you'll still only be eating 300 calories. Even if you were to tie a sack around your neck like a horse on the farm, and you just stuck your face into a whole goddamn sack full of Magic Spoon, I bet you wouldn't be able to eat 1,000 calories before you passed out. This stuff is healthy as shit. It's keto-friendly, gluten-free, grain-free, soy-free, and low-carb. So, folks, go to magicspoon.com/Jim. I bet that's what some people would like to do to me right now. magicspoon.com/Jim to grab a custom bundle and start your new year off right. Use the promo code Jim at checkout. Save $5 off your order. And, of course, don't forget about the 100% happiness guarantee. If you eat a box of Magic Spoon and are immediately not 100% happy in your life and your relationships with all your friends and your job and everything, then they will refund your money. No questions asked.
If you don't like Magic Spoon, the delicious cereal, they'll refund your money.
Oh, you got to have 100% happiness on the Magic Spoon or they'll refund your money. But you can still be a miserable, sorry sack of shit in all other aspects of your life. But if you don't like this cereal, and you're not going to get any money back on that, folks, but if you don't like this cereal, they'll give you your money back. So this is the best bet in life. Hey, let me ask you this. If you're mad at your wife and you're miserable, you don't like her, is she going to give you all the money back that you spent on her? Fucking gum-bumping bipolar bitch.
Hey.
How about, well, I'm telling you what.
Who do you have a problem with today?
How about your neighbors? How about your neighbors? The fucking guy comes over and borrows your goddamn lawnmower, keeps it for 6 months and brings it back on empty. You're not happy with him. He's not going to give you that gas money back, but Magic Spoon will. How about your kids? Your delinquent howl-at-the-moon kids. You spend all that money on school. You spend all that money on training them to be upstanding citizens. What are they? They're delinquents. They're out roaming the streets in gangs. They're not going to give you that money back, but Magic Spoon will. See? magicspoon.com/Jim. Use the code Jim to save $5 off, and it's backed with 100% happiness guarantee. You'll be happy about your cereal. Everything else, fucking crapshoot.
Well, Jim, we'll continue on with this happiness guaranteed episode of the Drive Thru, but I wanted to ask you about formats. You talked about in Mid-South, you laughed about the idea that you would have been in possession of a format and it would have been anything like what you read with the TNA format earlier. When did that change? And what was it like for you specifically in 93 when you went up to Raw for the first time in the summer of 93? Were those formats different than everything you had ever seen before?
No, they were more nicely typed. revised a lot more. Revisions in the old days past the first draft that was typed up were done with a fucking pen on the fly, right? But they would actually have shit retyped when they changed something. But otherwise, no, the format looked mostly the same, even. And obviously, we didn't get them. The talent didn't get the formats in the WWF in 1993 either, because there wasn't anything on it you needed if you knew who you. There was a list again of all the matches by the door. Just go out and do your match, do your fucking promo, you're fine. The ones that Bruce and I started writing in 96 when I joined the, what did they call it by that time? The creative team, booking committee, whatever, were still the same basic formats. And I don't want to expose our business, but we took a piss break and I tried to get in a stack and find just a sample format from that. And I haven't got the format yet. I found a couple of other things, but the ones that were printed in the Midnight Express scrapbook, the ones that I did when I was on the WCW booking committee, it was basically the same thing. You've got your blank format that you used for all the programs. Raw had a format, syndicated television had a format that had all of your commercial breaks and the time of them in it, and you filled it in as you went. And it started with the open of the show, announcers, match, whatever, just that information. So it would all fit on the same sheet, segment by segment. And it wasn't until, again, Shitstain had to begin justifying his position. And then the crew got bigger. And then Vince thought that there should be more detail. And then they started numbering with their own numbering system, every item on the formats so that you could find it easily. It wasn't just segment 4, item 3 anymore. Now they started at the top, so you had 100 different numbered items in the program, including copyright signature, got its own number, right? For 3 seconds at the end, copyright signature or whatever the fuck. And it just got to be more paper, and then they started cutting trees down, and then they started putting the verbiage in the promos and treating it like a script of a television show. And it got ridiculous. But that all came, around in the late 90s with all of the other hysteria. And then I came back to OVW and started doing a 1-page format. But I would have 25 pages of handwritten notes that I would refer to for everybody's instructions. And then more guys got formats just because it was a school. It's here's your homework, study it, see what everybody else was supposed to do. Then watch the show and see whether they did it or not. But that was because it was a learning experience and not because we were trying to do, high concept television movies.
How many guys wanted to have their promos written out for them versus guys who wanted to do it the traditional way? In OVW.
In OVW, well, as I've said, it was a mixture. It wasn't fish nor fowl. I didn't want to write them a promo that they would do word for word, because then they're just actors, and that's not wrestling. But because I was the booker, all the producers, all the agents, everybody, I didn't have time to sit with each guy for 20 or 30 minutes and go back and forth, blah blah blah. So I would sit down with everybody individually and I'd tell them verbally the promo, what I thought that they should say in this situation, and then we would discuss it. And if they wanted to throw anything in or whatever the fuck, or ask any questions, and then I would say, now here is what I just told you. Here in my handwriting, I've jotted this down, what I just told you. So if you have a question, you can't find me because I'm over here going through this finish with somebody. It might be in here. I don't want you to memorize it. This is your story. Now you just tell the fucking story. So if it was a long thing, that definitely would happen. If it was just a pre-tape and I was standing there in front of them, I wouldn't give them anything written down. I would tell them, here, and This was a thing I started with the guys in MLW just a couple years ago when I would produce some of their stuff when I was doing the commentary for them. Tom Lawler, I remembered one time, was doing an interview, and he had come up with something that was witty to say, but it didn't fit the picture because of what had happened to him, the attitude he should have. He should be more pissed off, the demeanor that he should have had. His was more frivolous, and, it was witty stuff. But I said, look, it's good. It doesn't fit this. This is the demeanor that you should have after something like this has happened to you. I forget what the angle was, but I said, but you've been a UFC fighter. Look at your fucking ears. He had his long hair covering his ears. I said, fucking flip that hair back and let me see those goddamn, fucking things of broccoli on each side of your head. You were a former UFC fighter. If the same thing had happened to you, if the same thing had been said about you when you were in that world, how would you have responded if it was a real situation? And let them bring that out. It's like sometimes, a band will be writing a song and they'll come up with some cool lyrics, but the lyrics don't really fit the song. So save the lyrics, but they don't fit this song. So in some cases, you find guys that will write things for themselves or come up with things that might be great for them to say in certain situations, but not necessarily in this one. And that's where you have to work with them and say, no, this wouldn't be your reaction if this wouldn't make any sense. Don't just go for the cool line, go for the real response. And so I never liked writing shit down and expecting people to read it word for word. If you read it word for word, it's not going to be any good. It's going to sound like all these other promos where they're memorizing shit and reading it. And remember, one of the fucking formats from the WWE a couple years ago had the stage direction. So-and-so lifts his hand to his head. Fuck me. If somebody had told me, now, when you go out and say this, we want you to lift your hand to your head, you know what I'd have done? I'd have scratched my ass. Your thoughts?
I may be getting the exact quote wrong, but I think you said a few episodes ago that when Adam Cole, when you first saw him, he got it right away when it came to promos.
Yeah.
What does that mean? When you see someone and you don't feel the need right away to, not the need, but you don't say, like, oh, I got to critique this, or this has to completely change. When you see someone, you're like, wow, this guy's got it. What does that mean?
Well, besides being well-spoken, articulate, and I take that back. If somebody's supposed to be Eddie Kingston, his gimmick, he's not supposed to be well-spoken and articulate, right? But in his own way.
Right. You couldn't write for him.
Right. But if they're well-spoken for themselves, if they're articulate for themselves, if when you hear them speak, they seem to mean what they're saying, they seem to be serious about it. Even if they're joking in their gimmick. Whatever you hear a guy say, he sounds like he means it. He sounds like he's just come up with it for the first time. It's not rehearsed. Nobody told him to say it. And he's hitting all the points. He's selling the issue. He's selling the match. He's, illustrating the reason why he feels the way he does about what the situation is between him and his opponent and what he's going to do about it. In whatever manner or form that takes, that's the basic gist of it. If somebody's out there saying shit that somebody's going to point to when a heel went out and said, yeah, I've just fucked 50 women and I've done this and that. No. A heel, especially in the territory days, was supposed to brag and boast. And it's not about whether he's saying blatantly untrue shit and being silly. It's about whether he's saying blatantly untrue shit, but he expects you to believe it because he's one of these guys that's just full of shit. He's Geno Moore that had the fucking long-running program in Japan with Terry Funk. He's the guy next door that grew up next to the famous football player and showed him everything he knows. That's a fucking braggadocious heel. It's not that You say, well, he's saying a bunch of shit and I know it's not true. Yes, of course you know it's not true, but you're supposed to think that he's trying to make you believe it. That's the fucking thing. So there's the point is that there's a million different ways and a million different personalities that you can have in wrestling. And it just comes down to whether you are trying to make people believe in some respect that there is something legitimate about you that sets you apart from all the rest of these yahoos that are just doing what they're told. And it can draw you in either verbally or the physical charisma when you're watching them in the ring or whatever. The old say what you want about wrestling, but that guy's nuts or that guy or whatever. That's what you look for. And Adam Cole that you mentioned, he was articulate, well-spoken. He didn't stumble over his words. He had good camera presence. He had eye contact. He made you believe that he meant what he said, and it flowed. And with a lot of guys, especially when they're green, when they're inexperienced, when they're rookies, they're trying to say something they've memorized because they think it'll be cute. And therein goes the degree. I want a degree of difficulty of 5, execution of 10 instead of the other way around. Or they're just not comfortable. I mean, you wouldn't believe the seminars that we've done in OVW and Ring of Honor and any training program I've been involved with. You give guys an opportunity. Okay, you cut me a 1-minute promo and get yourself over to me. They won't even take the minute. They don't know what to say. Some of them try to imitate wrestlers they've seen on television. Some of them try to come up. We had one guy at a Ring of Honor camp that his whole promo was about he was a space alien from another galaxy that had done, I don't know what the fuck. And me and Kevin Kelly both looked at each other and we said, tell you what, go back and come up with who the fuck you are on this planet, because we don't engage in interspecies wrestling here, and then come back and be a real person, because apparently you haven't watched a lot of Ring of Honor. But that's... the guys would take 37 seconds and just go blank and stop. I said, okay, well, go ahead.
How many guys, when you would first see them or evaluate their promo, or it was during a seminar, were doing promos that they memorized?
Anybody that could do a promo, 80% of them. The ones that couldn't do a promo, you couldn't tell whether they'd memorized anything or not. And I generally, in a crowd of 30 or 40, you would have 20 really good looking athletes, and you could tell that they'd tried hard on a lot of their moves. And you'd have 3 or 4 guys that could cut a promo that you would put on television at that point. And then we'd have to say, guys, here's you're trying for a job where one of the main parts of the job is you've got to be on television and talk and get yourself over. And I know it's not a talent that everybody just possesses naturally, but most of y'all have worked on these moonsaults and have a coronas and all these monkey flips and tic tackles and things. And we got 4 guys out of the 36 that I see here that we could cut a promo that I would put on television tomorrow. So, that's unfortunately, that's part of it. You used to be able to get by in the wrestling business if you were an underneath heel or an underneath babyface, if you couldn't do a promo because you never got a chance to anyway. And you hopefully would work enough places and get enough experience that it would come to you. But now from the start, you got to be able to talk, tell people why you're different, why they should be interested in you, get your shit over. And it helps if you're not a complete clown, although that doesn't disqualify you anymore from getting a job. But it helps if you're not.
You mentioned before, not to spoil our business here, that when you were looking through your various formats and different things, you ran across your agent reports.
Yes, I did. And we've talked about the agent reports also on some of the programs, but in the 90s, every weekend, the WWF would run their house shows. And at every house show, they would have 2 agents, one for the box office and one to run the locker room, give the finishes, watch the matches, make sure Michaels didn't fucking show his ass in the ring or whatever. And then they would call in, I've mentioned this, they'd call in a special line at the office and record the report on the night immediately when the show was over. And bless Howard Finkel, he would get to the office at 6 o'clock in the morning or whatever it was and type up not only the agent reports, but also the Finkel report, which covered the things that were in the newsletters or things that were in the burgeoning early internet or wrestling news that was out there amongst the public, and anything that he thought that Vince and the creative team or whatever might need to know. So, and I mean, I've got a bunch, I didn't save all of them. I've got a bunch of these, but I just pulled this one out just because I hadn't seen one in a while. And it's an agent report, and it happened to be one from Knoxville, Tennessee, February 20th, 1997, and something that I'd forgotten that I fucking did. In those days, and by the way, this is for Knoxville, and then the other town that night was, I swear to God, the Unterfrankenhall in Aschaffenburg, Germany. So that night they ran Knoxville, Tennessee, and Aschaffenburg, Germany. So anyway. And it would give the office all the information for I won't go into Germany and I won't go the whole thing for Knoxville, but I'll give you the card, I'll give you the gate, and I'll give you one of the descriptions just so you see the flavor of the thing. The original card was changed considerably, apparently, but listen to what the original card was. Undertaker versus Farook, Ahmed Johnson versus Crush, Goldust versus Savio Vega, Jesse James, who was Road Dogg at that point, right, versus Buddy Landell, Phineas and Henry Godwin against the new Blackjacks, who were Wyndham and Bradshaw, Tom Pritchard against Razor Ramon, Barry Horowitz against Diesel, and of course this was the fake Razor and Diesel.
Hey, is it Tom Pritchard as Tom Pritchard at that point?
Yeah, so I'm fixed to get into that. And then Freddie Joe Floyd and T.L. Hopper against the Headbangers. That was the original card, right? Well, apparently that's at some point. Ahmed, he was hurt or whatever happened to him. I don't fucking know, but he wasn't on the card. Also, Crush was gone for some reason. Also, the Blackjacks, they were gone for some reason. Also, basically the whole goddamn card was changed for whatever reason. And I remember JR, because JR was the one that was booking the live event lineups at that point, coming to me because it was Knoxville and saying, well, fuck, what can we do here? Because what was advertised was completely fucked up, including, one of the Ahmed Johnson against Crush, whether you like it or not, was one of the main event matches. And so Goldust against Savio Vega was also, and Goldust was not there. There was injuries and there was whatever the fuck going on. So the first thing I said, you've got Freddie Joe Floyd and T.L. Hopper on the card, and nobody in Knoxville, Tennessee knows who the fuck they are or cares, but it's Dirty White Boy and Tracy Smothers, and all the wrestling fans in Knoxville know who they are. So drop that. That might help us a little bit. We can't have Goldust, but Marlena's still good. Marlena and Sonny, who also they know in Knoxville, in an arm wrestling contest. This is when they had Honky Tonk Man, right? It was on the roster. He was managing. They said, well, we'll send him down to do an interview. I said, okay. Then White Boy, Buddy Landell was already on the card because Buddy's from Knoxville. And if White Boy wasn't the most popular wrestler from Knoxville, Tennessee in Knoxville, it was Buddy Landell. I said, we can call Ron Wright. So the card ended up The Undertaker versus Farouk, and they added a steel cage because they jacked everybody on the other main events. Dirty White Boy versus Buddy Landell. I worked Buddy's corner, and we brought Ron Wright in for White Boy's corner. Then Tracy Smothers wrestled the new Diesel, who would be 23 years later the mayor of the city of Knoxville, Glenn Jacobs. Razor Ramon, the fake Razor, wrestled Ricky Rocket because he was a local guy that we found at the back door.
What do you mean?
We still didn't have enough fucking people. We think the WWF's going to book Ricky Rocket if they had anybody else, right?
Well, when you say you found him at the back door, he was just hanging out?
Yes. Try to get booked, and it worked for once. I think Buddy may have brought him. Is that because I said, Buddy, you got anybody can work? I'll see what I can do.
For the rest of this guy's life, he's telling people, I work for the WWF against Razor Ramon in Knoxville. And it was true.
Then Barry Horowitz worked with Headbanger Thrasher, who had been in Smoky Mountain. Mosh worked with Brackus. Remember Brackus? That was one of like the 6 weeks worth of matches he actually had in the company. And basically that was the card that, because everybody else was in Germany, right? And Tom Pritchard ended up not working because this was when his back was out and he couldn't hardly stand up, and they said, no, don't worry about it. So that card did 3,465 paid with 788 comps. Remember, I just did my report, and I had fucking 180 comps out, and 100 of those or more were to sponsors that had paid money to begin with. But anyway, it had grossed $49,416. So that was what we did. And also they got some contact names with me or from me, and I put Buddy on it. And we had Channel 6, one of the local TV stations there with Buddy brought a kid that was terminally ill. They were doing a news story on him, and they took some pictures and did some video with some of the boys. So anyway, the best match of the night poll, according to the ring announcer, was the cage match between Undertaker and Farook, followed by the Dirty White Boy and Buddy Landell and Tracy Smothers and Diesel.
Tracy Smothers and Unabomb.
Tracy Smothers and Unabomb, yes. But that was, again, we were doing what we could to save the show. And I had forgotten until I saw this report that we did this. And Jack Lanza did the recap of the Dirty White Boy and Buddy Landell match. Jim Cornette was in Landell's corner, and Ron Wright was in White Boy's corner. Ron Wright is an old timer. Now, remember, besides Jack never worked Tennessee, also he's telling this for The Office, Vince, and, he doesn't think Vince knows who any of these people are, and probably didn't. Apparently, he's been around here for about 40 years. A lot of people remember him, a nice old fellow. He's kind of crippled up, but nevertheless, the people remember him, and we didn't disappoint them. I wanted to kind of remember what this fellow meant all through these years, and we tried to keep it as his night. This was also the Hooters match. Wait a minute. Now, hold on. If Dirty White Boy was to beat Landell, if you save your ticket stub, you get one order of chicken wings at Hooters. See, that was one of the... Hey, they wanted me to help them draw a fucking house in Knoxville, right?
I still like Ron Wright as this kind old fellow.
Yeah, well, there's more. So Jack Lanza continues, I guess we're in the chicken business, but nevertheless, they were sponsors and we treated them well. We had a couple of Hooters girls that went down to the ring. After the talent got into the ring, took the robes, brought them back, etc. Guest ring announcer from Channel 8, Alan Williams. He did a nice job. We gave him a nice introduction. Jack is speaking, dictating, so he gets a little repetitious. Anyway, Alan Williams did a nice job and introduced Landell and Cornette. Of course, the people certainly remember these fellows. I guess this was the town for Cornette. He got in and did a little spot on the microphone. And then the Dirty White Boy was introduced, and he came out by himself. If we were going to do this right, I wanted to give Ron Wright a separate entrance since he was an icon in this town for so many years. So Dirty White Boy got on the mic, gave him a nice introduction, and he went out. As a matter of fact, the old timer was going to have a hip replacement this morning, but he postponed it so he could do this.
What?
I swear to God. Here's the thing. Ron had his hip replacement 2 years before that. I guarantee you when Jack Lanza had told him, Ron, it's so nice of you to come and do. Well, I was going to have a hip replacement this morning, but I decided to come on. I know he had his hip replacement in 95 because the last time we used him for the series with me and Bruiser against him and White Boy, I got in the ring and did something to White Boy one night on TV, and I was waiting for Ron to come up from behind me. And I had to stand there for a while, and I'd seen him out of the corner of my eye roll in. And then finally he grabbed my shoulder and spun me around and nailed me. What happened when he rolled in the ring, his artificial hip came out of the socket, and he had to roll back the other way to put it back in before he could stand up. But anyway, Jack Lanza continues. He postponed his hip replacement. He had a cane, but he had a little extra pop in his step as he went to the ring tonight. It probably did more for him than 10 or 20 doctors could. They had a good match. The match was very good. They did a thing with Cornette and Ron. Ron couldn't walk too well, but Jim came and fed him. And Ron hit Jim with the cane, and Cornette went down. Landell hit the ropes, came off, and Ron tripped Landell, who took a bump on his face. The Dirty White Boy dropped the big elbow and hooked him for the 1-2-3. So Ron Wright was instrumental in not only nailing Cornette, but winning the match for the Dirty White Boy, and everybody was happy. Nice fellow.
That's a pretty cool write-up, too.
Well, yeah, and I mean, this was it. Hold on, I'll go to the others. I think Rene Goulet was in the box office because Jack would go on longer because of the matches, right? And also Vince would get pissed if he didn't get details on these matches, even though if he got the details, he probably didn't read it or retain it, but if he didn't see enough text, he was thinking they were dogging it.
What did he say about Ricky Rocket?
Hold on here.
Was that his name?
Ricky? Say about Ricky Rocket, yes. Razor Ramon versus Ricky Rocket. The match was to have been Razor versus Tom Pritchard tonight, but Tom's back is extremely bad. Even though he wanted to work, I didn't think it was advisable. I think he's going to the doctor on Friday in Connecticut. It wasn't right for him to work. They had a lot of locals around here, so we used Ricky Rocket, a smaller kid, good worker. I put him with Razor, and Razor over with the Razor's Edge. People got to see Razor.
That's crazy that even though it's the fake Razor, he's still talking about him like that in the report.
Well, yeah. Well, if he hadn't have, Vince would have got hot because it's Vince's fucking deal.
But he's even pretending like he's a worker like Scott Hall was. But he was a young worker, but we put him in with Razor, so everything was okay.
Oh, but I was going to say on the front here, Rene Goulet had said... basically a couple of meet and greets scheduled for tonight, but the parties showed up late. They will be fingered privately. When that means that the guys that were scheduled to do the meet and greet showed up late, so we used Sonny and Honky Tonk Man to do it. And he mentioned and the best match of the night poll. Oh, also in the poll, two people said one did not like Buddy Landell, and one did not like the way that Tracy Smothers was treated. Huh. That's the only comments from the WWF ring announcer asking the fans on the way out. Besides Undertaker and Farook, Dirty White Boy and Landell and Smothers and Diesel were the best matches, and the comments were about Smoky Mountain guys. But otherwise than that.
Did anyone have a reputation amongst the agents for writing really cutting reports?
No, because they knew what the audience was, and they were trying not to get, unless the guys were just doing egregious shit to get heat on themselves, and they should talk about it. They tried to downplay any minor bullshit that they probably addressed with the guys in person, except I wasn't there to see Strongbow's reports. I wasn't in the office then, so I don't know what he might have said about anybody. Brackus. I was very encouraged with Brackus. The things that we talked about last night, two or three of the things that we talked about, he got them. He did exactly like we told him. A little polishing, but at least he remembered them. Oh, he's got a great attitude. He's a very nice guy. The boys like him because of his attitude. He's anxious to learn, very coachable, just a nice kid. He was a nice kid.
I think I see why the wrestlers love Jack Lanza so much.
Well, I mean, he didn't want to get anybody any unnecessary heat unless they were jacking off on purpose. Because you go out, if you're rotten and you go out and you're rotten, the only thing you can do is try to help somebody be better. So it wasn't going to fucking, help any to bury them in the agent report. But there you have it. 3,465 people paid $50,000 to see that hodgepodge, but we managed to save it.
Well, you saved that, and you kept that the same way you've kept your hair. And other people need to keep their hair, too.
You know, a lot of people have said to me that I look the same as I used to back in the 80s, except I'm a little bit grayer and a little bit skinnier, but otherwise I look exactly the same. You know what I chalk that up to, Brian? I chalk that up to grading on the curve because, to be quite honest, I was merely acceptable looking in the 80s. But since I haven't changed, whereas everybody that was really hot in the 80s now looks like death warmed over, as Mama Cornette used to say, then I actually have come out ahead of the game. And one of the things you've seen, Peter Frampton. I just watched Peter Frampton on Access TV the other night in a recent concert. And remember, no, you don't remember because you weren't even a gleam in your father's eye at that point. But when Frampton Came Alive came out, the album cover, there was that fucking Peter Frampton. Big close-up of him on the cover with all that hair, and all the girls in the 70s just wanted to run their hands and their fingers and potentially their boobies and anything else that they could get up there through and into Peter Frampton's hair, just cuddle up with that hair. Well, you know what Peter Frampton looks like today? He's balder than a goddamn 7-ball on a pool table. And he deserves it. Fucking prick. All that pussy he got in the 70s, including some of mine. But the worm has turned, folks. Yes. Goddamn, everybody I was trying to get into already wanted to run their fingers through Peter Frampton's hair. Well, where was I going with this? Oh,
I don't know.
I'll tell you exactly what. Now, I got all my hair, and Peter Frampton couldn't get laid in a whorehouse with a fistful of 50s. He could not get a date on a tombstone. But I'm still doing just fine, except for the pandemic and being married for all these years and all that sort of thing. But I've still got my hair. And you can too, folks. You can keep that hair with our friends at Keeps, because 2 out of 3 men will experience some form of hair loss by the time that they're 35 years old. And that 2 out of 3 men, that's in the world, right? Not just in the United States. I know it's stressful here in the U.S. Your hair falls out at a more rapid rate, but even in Bolivia, they're having problems with the hair falling out. More than 50 million men here in this country alone in the United States suffer from male pattern baldness. If it spreads any more, well, more than 50 million men, it'd have to include some women. Is there such a thing as female pattern baldness? It might be catching. Nevertheless, there are only 2 FDA-approved medications that can prevent hair loss, and Keeps offers both of them, along with convenient virtual doctor consultations, medications delivered straight to your door. You don't have to leave the house. And the treatment start at just $10 a month because Keeps offers those generic versions, discreet packaging, proven results, more 5-star reviews than any of its competitors, loud noises, statistics. Folks, if you're ready to take action and prevent hair loss, go to Keeps. That's KEEPS.com/JCE to get your first month of treatment for free. Keeps.com/JCE. 1 month, your first month for free. Keep a hold of that. Don't look like Peter Frampton, a disgusting Frampton. Look like me with Keeps.
It sounds like you've been waiting to cut this promo on Peter Frampton for a long time. I don't know where all this venom. Isn't he losing his hearing? You should feel bad for the guy.
Yeah, Sherry Stewart liked him in 1976.
Sherry Stewart? Who's that?
Well, never you mind. But I had designs on her, and she was a Framptonite.
Why didn't you grow your hair?
Well, have you ever seen Peter Frampton's Frampton Comes Alive album cover? You'd not only had to grow it, you would have had to curled it and fucking colored it. And that was a lot of goddamn stuff to go through for a teenager back in the 70s. Just trying to...
You could have started by just growing it.
Well, I didn't want to look like some kind of hippie. I've always had a very nice, well-kept head of hair. And I've kept most of it.
With keeps.
Keeps.
Well, let's keep going with the show here. We seem to be stuck in
Is this still a show?
We seem to be stuck in a circle.
I thought we were just talking to each other at this point.
Reviews. What reviews do you have? Let's get those out of the way.
Well, why don't we get them out of the way? Fuck, we might close up with these. There was just a couple of wrestling programs from the major organizations on the air over the weekend on Friday night, SmackDown and Rampage. And I'm going to give you Rampage first because there was one thing that I could actually stomach and watch on that program as opposed to SmackDown where there were two. I will make mention of the fact that, they've given up on Friday night at AEW. Every once in a while, you'll get something that if you want to go out of your way to watch it, as I did with this match, you'll see it. Otherwise, they've given up. It's like they gave the later night time slot to the little kids to just romp and do what they want. I would have thought they'd had to be in bed by then. But anyway, Adam Cole, by the way, they're rehabilitating Adam Cole. Have you heard about this?
I have not. I mean, we saw that promo on Dynamite this week talking about his big match with Evil Uno, but that's all I know.
Oh, yeah. Well, and he won that. Shocking upset. Adam Cole beat Pizzeria Uno on the program and then did another in-ring promo trying to talk the people into believing that he's going to be AEW World Champion. He promised the people he would be the AEW World Champion the week after he got beat in a garbage match by the company mascot. So I think, unfortunately, and we just used him as an example of a guy that got promos and sounded serious, he's trying to talk himself at this point into, I didn't make a mistake. I know I just wrestled a pleather-clad potato, and I know that last week I got beat by a mascot, but I'm going to be the AEW champion. Then they had some more girls. I was on fast forward, but some more girls beat each other up with chairs backstage. That never happens. And then they had a match that I thought that I would get into, want to critique, whatever. Mercedes Martinez versus Thunder Rosa. You know what finish was, Brian?
No.
It's a girls match, right? Not only that, it's a cold girls match. There's no death angle between these two, right? Mercedes Martinez just got there. Finish was Mercedes Martinez pulled a lead pipe out from under the ring and caved Thunder Rosa's fucking skull in with it and got disqualified. And excrement, and I think, and Jericho also, I've kind of tuned him out, but he was screaming like he does, when he does the lyrics to the rock songs. They weren't remarking with shock and concern in their voice that this girl just got her head caved in with a lead pipe. They were a disqualification. You never see that. You never see that in AEW. A disqualification. Holy shit. This must be bad, what she just did. You think? She hauled off and swung, and it was obvious. I say lead pipe in quotation marks. It was a gimmick pipe. No blood, no brain matter, no CAT scan, no stopping the show for a ambulance to come and take this poor brain dead Thunder Rosa away in a vegetative state. She just hauled off, hit her over the head with a lead pipe. She went down, got disqualified. I don't know if it was ever referred to again.
And why do they hate each other?
I don't know. I don't.
All right.
Because one of them apparently really makes an impression because they've just been around each other for just a few days. She just got there. Anyway, the main event segment was the one that I came for. Mark Henry is still apparently his job. He shows up in a small box for 30 seconds a week to interview the main event participants on Rampage and then say, it's time for our main event.
Yeah, he seems happy to be there.
Paul White is never been seen again. They have 2 national, is he still there? I'm wondering. They have 2 national television programs per week, and they have Mark Henry and Big Show working for the company, and Mark Henry gets a 30-second interview once a week, and we haven't seen Big Show in months. Anyway, Lethal did a great promo. He's so good. Starks is great too, and we know that. But again, this is one of the first times in quite a while that Lethal has been seen since TNA on national cable. And now he's not doing, the black machismo. He's being Jay Lethal, and he's fucking great. And both of them conduct themselves like professionals. And they had a match for the FTW title. But it was a match between Ricky Starks and Jay Lethal, so it's going to be worth watching, even though it's the bogus belt thing. They rang the bell, and they locked up with each other, and it was the best lockup that I've seen in weeks. And immediately you could tell the difference in these 2 guys and almost every other match you see on TV these days. Both of them, the facials, the struggle. They're serious. They look like athletes. They worked to where tempers flared, and they started laying it in a little bit. They showed some animosity toward each other. It was a little dirty boxing in the clinches, not just this fucking choreographed bullshit. There was a clear baby face and a clear heel, so you didn't have any problem with that. Hobbs was at ringside, made the distraction, and Starks hit a heat spot on Lethal to go to the break. And coming back, guess what? He was getting heat on him. Jay Lethal is already, right now, currently, as far as in-ring and television promo athletic performer, in the top 20% of the AEW roster, period. And we've seen him now twice on the 2 weekly shows wrestle, and he's, spoiler alert, he's about to do his second job. Remember when...
It's like Ruby Soho.
Yes, remember when people won when you first saw them. That's why you kept watching them, and then they started losing. But if they lose when you first see them and then it's the backwards wrestling federation. They've just decided we're going to do things completely differently than everybody ever in history. We're going to put people in main events, beat the shit out of them, and 6-8 months later, they'll be ready for preliminaries where they go over. So anyway, they did nice ducks and counters. Lethal hit a clothesline, got an opening. To make a comeback, it was different. He hit quick, multiple false finishes. They were having a wrestling match. And the momentum starts picking up. Starks hit a big power bomb, got a 2 count. And then they traded in the middle. Boom, boom, boom. And finally, Lethal's cooking. He levels Starks. Hobbs is up on the apron. He drop kicks Hobbs off the apron. Starks stops Lethal and shoots him to the far side. Lethal ducks the clothesline and dives through the ropes out of the ring toward Hobbs, who has come up from the drop kick, but Hobbs moved and Lethal crashed face first. And that's why I wrote, what the fuck? That was too dangerous for the reward of that spot. But out of nowhere, Dante Martin shows up in the arena, runs through the ring, and jumps off the top rope with a big-ass leap on Hobbs, and he nails him. But Lethal, this is the only part that was not red. Lethal just crashed face first on the dive that Hobbs sidestepped, but he gets back in the ring. So apart from that, he got back in the ring and hit a cutter. I'm tempted to start calling it an RKO so everybody will know what it is, but then that specific to Orton, like Diamond Cutter specific to Diamond Dallas Page. So we're going to have to figure out something else to call it. But anyway, he went for the lethal injection. Stark ducked it and countered it, went for it again, and Starks ducked it again, caught him up on top of his shoulders and hit his reverse upside down Death Valley driver finish. Boom, 1, 2, 3, smooth finish. Great match. It's not even a bad result because Starks is a guy they've been using, but it's just ridiculous to book Lethal like this when you've just signed him. Like everybody that they just signed, and then bring them in and beat them on television in their first, second, third, even fourth appearances. So by then, fucking the bloom, as they say, is off the rose. Once that people have seen somebody lose 3 or 4 times, that's it. They are where they are. They're not going to be main event fucking guys. And I don't know why this is somehow revolutionary to make that statement. Have you ever heard anybody until now, or seen anybody ever do this like this with anybody?
No, it's really weird, and we haven't seen Jay Lethal win yet. He showed up, and then he was gone, and then he came back as the replacement to Leo Rush in that program, and then he was gone again, and then he was back in that program, and he hasn't won. And the fans already know who he is, so he's as over as anyone who debuts who isn't like a WWF superstar, WWE, excuse me. But we've seen him randomly, and he doesn't win. And we brought up Ruby Soho earlier. She came in there super over, a lot more over than even Jay Lethal. And after a while, she just never won again. And now, I mean, that was the thing. When you see the result and you hear about Jay Lethal, it doesn't surprise me because it's only 2 days after we just had the conversation about the Ruby Soho match. Why? Nothing against Nyla Rose, but why are you doing this to Ruby Soho? Why are you booking her like this?
It's just, it's inexplicable. And yet still, once again, someone tried to defend this. The Puddin' Gang's on TV every week.
And Adam Cole lost to Orange Cassidy.
The mascot beat Adam Cole, but Ruby Soho couldn't beat Nyla Rose? That would screw up your booking somehow? The more that they're gifted, the more that they just piss on it. So
are they trying to put AEW originals over anybody that comes in, whether it's WWE or just, like a Jay Lethal who was established on the independents for years and years, just trying to put over their original people over those people?
It didn't make a lot of sense when Vince buried most of the WCW talent, but it made more sense than this because he didn't spend the money to get the top WCW talent. He got underneath WCW talent. But still, you could have done something with a few guys. He buried, but that's when he was loaded with a roster of the biggest, best talent in the world. Now you've got a company that started with a ragtag band of outlaw guys that most of them weren't ready for television. All of them got their jobs because they're friends. And over the last 2 years, slowly, the WWE has been very accommodating in releasing people that fan base would want to see even more than if they were in the WWE. And they've picked up talent, and they've got legitimate guys on the roster, and they still, it's like he doesn't want to hurt anybody's feelings. Hey, sorry. Sometimes the ugly, pimply-faced girl, the fucking night of the prom or whatever, it's all you can get. But if you lose your pimples and get your braces taken off and then you're the captain of the football team, then you can probably get the cheerleader. And that's what now Tony Khan got a few cheerleaders. But he won't stop encouraging the pimply-faced girls to call him back.
Well, that was Rampage. Did you watch any WWE programming?
I did just a bit on the Smackdown. As I mentioned, they ought to call the show Letdown. There were actually 2 things on the show worth watching this week. And of course, the first one, it was right out of the gate, right at the top of the program on SmackDown. Here comes Roman Reigns and the Usos and Paul Heyman. Paul, we got you back where you belong. again, I watched these segments, and Roman Reigns didn't speak in this. It was all Heyman till the finish, basically. Roman, got a couple of words in, but it was Heyman telling the story, explaining what's happened. And he's a master. He's a genius. I can't even, his facials are out of this world. Every facial expression he has, every little movement and response. He was wrong all along to have felt that he needed to protect Roman Reigns from Brock Lesnar. In actuality, he went through all the verbal gymnastics to explain everything that's gone on, including the stuff they had to vamp and ad lib about. And he said that, the wrong COVID infected the wrong person. And so I had to do what I had to do. But he went through a bunch of verbal gymnastics. And then finally, the story was that once that he was with Brock and he realized where he was, he thought everything would be okay because Reigns would be the champion over here and Brock would be the champion over there. And there would be no conflict. And he deserved what Reigns had. He's saying he deserved what Reigns gave him because Reigns is standing in the ring next to him. And then he says, but what he couldn't tolerate was Brock challenging Reigns. That's just stupid. And then he knocked Brock Lesnar. He's a schmuck. I couldn't stand to be around that happy idiot with the shirt and the ponytail. I didn't want to be stuck with a happy Saskatchewan farmer for the rest of my life. So he basically sold Brock down the river because Brock was a schmuck. And now Paul realizes he needed to protect Brock from Roman Reigns. And there's Roman smiling like the cat that ate the canary. So anyway, again, what a fucking promo. And it made all this preposterous shit make sense. And then Reigns, now that he's fallen for this again, it was Paul Heyman in the ring explaining himself to someone that he wanted to stay on the good side of. So, Brian, you can imagine what it was. And then Reigns offered him, he said, the hand of forgiveness, the hand of love. And I wonder what else kind of hand Roman Reigns offered him. But Paul closed acknowledging Reigns as his tribal chief. And then telling the people, he was about to tell the people to acknowledge Reigns, and hear Goldberg's music hit. And now I was like, this is getting sad. I'm not talking about Goldberg's sad. Goldberg's rich and famous and wealthy, and he looks great for being 50, whatever. But it's sad that they haven't made a star in the last 20 years. And especially to, pay somebody to go to Saudi Arabia, whatever that costs for people to drop not only their morals, but their sense of self-preservation, go to Saudi Arabia. They're dwindling to a small few. Anyway, Goldberg acknowledged Roman Reigns as his next victim because he's in the Elimination Chamber for the Universal title, and you're next. And then the heels calmly left. So now we've got Reigns and Goldberg. How old was Roman Reigns when Goldberg was the WCW champion?
Oh, probably a teenager. I'd have to go check. Maybe
I bet he was in his teens.
Well, maybe not. I was a teenager now that I think about it. He couldn't have been.
Well, that was the first segment. Do you feel bad you missed anything so far?
So this is what they're bringing Goldberg back for. When did we see him last when he was saving his son? Was it the Saudi Arabia show? Who is he? Was it Lashley?
He's the only Jewish guy in the world that only wrestles in Saudi Arabia.
What the fuck? Yeah, really? Yeah, really? What is that?
It was one of those high-impact matches that was... What was the last one? The last Goldberg match was the high-impact one that was short and done, or was that the one that started to drag a bit?
I'm not even sure. I remember it was in the middle of the day.
That's another part of the problem. You can't remember the Goldberg matches because they all kind of look the same and they happen very sporadically. But then the other... On the distaff side, Brian, as they used to say, the female side of things, the other side of the gender fence, the very last segment on the program was the women's championship match. One of them, because they got as many women's champions as they have men's champions. They've been building all through the show that Ronda Rousey is going to make her debut on SmackDown. Apparently, when she was with the company before, she was only on Raw. She was never on SmackDown. Imagine that. But anyway, as the Ronda Rousey segment's about to come up, all of a sudden, boom, music, entrance, here comes Charlotte. And again, I know that Miko Watanabe and Sunni War Cloud, whatever the fuck, whoever gets the 5 and 6 and 7 star matches at the Joshis in Japan, I know that Uncle Dave and some of his minions are all fired up, and the Rihos of the world and the Emi Kimuras or Emi Sakuras and the Freddie Mercurys and etc. If you're wanting a female wrestling star in the United States of America, just look at a picture of Charlotte Flair. She looks like a star. She carries herself like she's better than everybody else. That's a heel, like a heel should. If she feels that way in real life, guess what? That's the way most of the male top guys in the business have felt. She comes out and looks like $1 million. And she gets in the ring with old Cruella DeVille. And Charlotte is dressed in this. Well, she's got the blonde hair and she's got this brightly colored outfit on and the belt and everything. She's just every color in the rainbow. And Cruella DeVille is standing next to her in a black suit with a black shirt and black shoes and jet black hair. It looked like a negative and a photograph standing next to each other. So then basically, I don't know whether they were just rushed or what, but they confused the issue to everybody at the start because the reason for this was apparently they had already announced that Ronda Rousey had asked to wrestle Becky Lynch at WrestleMania. So now Cruella has brought Charlotte out to say who she wants to wrestle. Well, that doesn't make any sense because Ronda won the Rumble, so therefore she would get to pick, right? I'm asking you a question. It requires a response.
That's the way traditionally the rules have worked, yes.
Okay, but didn't Charlotte say she was going to get in the Rumble to win the Rumble so she could pick her own opponent for the first time ever?
She did say that, yes.
She didn't win the Rumble.
No.
So now she's out here with Cruella, and Cruella say, well, who do you want to wrestle at WrestleMania? So Charlotte heels all over Ronda Rousey and how it's good that Ronda picked Becky because she couldn't beat her. And blah, blah, blah. And then Charlotte picked Sasha Banks. And she said, I wish Sasha was here so she could thank me for putting her in the main event at WrestleMania or whatever. And then Ronda's music hits. What is the most striking thing about Ronda Rousey's entrance when she's in a UFC fight?
Her intensity?
The game face.
Yeah.
That fucking pout face. That like, I care nothing for you and I hope you die a horrible death in front of your family face, right? Well, now here she comes to confront this bitch Charlotte Flair that there's obviously bad feelings amongst them. They play bad reputation. She's coming. She's smiling ear to ear. She's slapping the hands. She's happy to be there. She gets a big ovation from the people. And yes, she's supposed to be in the babyface position here, obviously, and especially with what we're about to see. She's the babyface. That's what they want. But it doesn't mean she has to come out like goddamn Mighty Igor offering the little kiddies a bite of his kielbasa. So anyway, she comes out. She won the Rumble, so she gets to pick. And even though she's already picked Becky, she's like, fuck it. She took a lot of time on this, and there was one long pause where I wondered, is she forgotten. The fans started chanting. It gave her a second. She got back on track. And she never really came out and said, I'm going to fight you, Charlotte Flair, you no good, disgusting, whatever. She just said, I'll see you at WrestleMania. Okay, so she changed her mind. And then Charlotte fires back at her. This title is holding the belt up. This title is my baby, and she's prettier than your baby.
Who wrote that?
So Ronda tries to go after Charlotte, but here comes Cruella, steps in between. She shoves Cruella out of the way, and Charlotte is backed up, and as she's going after Charlotte, Cruella jumps on. Now, she is a representative of the WWE, and she's also been fucking Naomi around, right? She's pissed at Naomi. Naomi's another babyface, can't get an even break because Cruella DeVille, even though Adam Pearce has warned her, she's still fucking with Naomi, right? So anyway, Cruella, the WWF representative, jumps up on Ronda Rousey's back. And so Charlotte leaves. Ronda throws Cruella over and puts her in the devastating Ronda Rousey armbar. And Cruella's selling like she's going to the electric chair. And Naomi's in the back watching the monitor going, what the fuck? That's my angle. Cruella's got all kinds of heat on Naomi. Naomi hadn't had a chance to do shit to Cruella in response, but Ronda Rousey's stretching her from asshole to appetite in the ring on live TV. And they went off the air. Right off the air. So that was SmackDown.
And the mystery continues. Who will Ronda see at WrestleMania?
Well, no, she was pointing at Charlotte when she said that, but she never actually came out as, okay, fuck Sasha Banks, or fuck Becky Lynch then. I'll take you. She did. I'll see you at WrestleMania. Well, she's going to see everybody. She comes in the back door and goes in the locker room. She'll see all kinds of people. Ronda is not a natural public speaker, I don't think either. She did okay with what she had, but we could have had a bigger announcement out of that. And I don't know why they got him in the ring under the false pretenses that didn't even make sense by the story that they had told before, but they eventually made the match out of it.
Well, that was SmackDown, and perhaps you are feeling smacked down and out. You want to physically get going, you want to get up, you want to get moving, but you also don't want to leave your house. There's a solution for that.
Yeah, there's a solution for a lot of things these days. Hopefully there'll be a solution for a podcast co-host that can't even be bothered to try to invent some transitions today. Oh boy, I'll tell you what, my muscles are sore because I've been working out. I've been trying to stay in shape, Brian, because of course I'm not as young as I used to be. No, my get up and go had gotten up and went until I got started hooked up with the people at Echelon Fitness, and now I can't get away from these people. Once you get involved with Echelon, you're in for life. It's like the mafia, because they're the affordable way to get the workout equipment, the workout community, and the instructor's motivation right in the comfort and privacy of your own home. Folks, if you've got the goal to get in shape or stay in shape or increase your bodily functions with age so that you don't just turn into dust and blow away, you got to keep active. And Echelon Fitness's fitness app provides you thousands of live and on-demand classes with great music from your favorite artists like the Strawberry Alarm Clock, the Troglodytes, and also those #1 award-winning disco singers, the Tramps. I don't know if they have any of those songs or not, but they got Pitbull. I don't know what Pitbull fucking sings. If a Pitbull was chasing me, I'd get a lot of exercise. Even if I was on that stationary bike, you can't get away. The dog would
That's a great
bite your
idea.
ass.
That's a great idea. Either a robot or perhaps a hologram dog that chases you on the treadmill.
Ooh, that is an idea. Or just, as I said, just play the Pitbull. I'll run screaming from that. But anyway, you can work out anytime, day or night, with Echelon Fitness and their machines and their equipment and their app and their instructors. You can crush your fitness goals, or even if you just want to sit there and slowly pick away at them instead of crushing them, Or maybe once you crush them up, you'll want to snort them. It's not up to me to decide what you do with your own goals.
What?
Just pick your class, climb that leaderboard. And you know that fucking leader, he's getting sick and tired of having his board climbed. He's going to have people walking the plank before long. I'll tell you another thing about these instructors. They motivate you, but I got one instructor. He's now currently under psychoanalysis, I should say, because I don't know what I said. Anyway, Echelon Fitness has a full range of affordable workout equipment. I talked about the stationary bikes. You can't get away from anybody, but boy, you can work up a sweat trying. The smart rowers, you don't even need a lake. The sleek fitness screens, where you can look at screens full of fitness. And the ever popular, and from what I'm told, no longer dangerous, auto-folding treadmill. They have revamped the patent on that thing. It doesn't just take off and go into business for itself. You have to want it to fold up before it does. They're all connected to provide the Echelon Fitness experience with around-the-clock classes for the family, including full-body workout programs. And one membership covers a family of 5. Just imagine what Echelon Fitness can do to your entire family's full bodies if left unchecked and just allowed to run rampant. And right now, folks, for a limited time offer, a limited time only. It's an offer for a limited time.
Yeah,
That's
it
why
is
it's
an offer.
only. Yes,
Yeah.
it is. Yes. It's a limited time offer for a limited time only. Podcast listeners of ours, you and me, Brian, get up to $840 off the MSRP on a variety of these items. To get this exclusive discount, you got to text the word DRIVE, DRIVE, to 818181. Text DRIVE to 818181 to get up to $840 off the MSRP. And once you get the $840 off the MSRP, see if they'll knock you down $5 or $10 on the cost of some of this workout shit. Message and data rates may apply. Terms available at echelonfit.com/SMS. Membership sold separately.
Well, Jim, let's get a few more questions here this week before we wrap up the show. A few more.
How many? All of them have been yours so far.
Yeah, we really haven't gotten to any questions now that I look.
We'd have had a nice conversation if you wouldn't have interrupted me.
Well, let's get some questions here from the listeners before we wrap things up. This one was sent to CornyDriveThru@gmail.com from Stephen Mackey, Aberdeen, Scotland.
Hello, Mr. Mackey. Okay.
What is your earliest memory of seeing the Beatles on television in the 60s? Were you a fan of their music? Do you have a favorite Beatles song? I can imagine that John was your favorite Beatle for his quick-witted sense of humor and not taking shit from anyone. Am I correct? Also, were you a fan of other British rock groups back in the day, like the Rolling Stones, the Who, the Kinks, Cream, the Animals, etc., etc.?
Well, let's see. Taking all that in order, except for I didn't really have a favorite Beatle because they were a group, right? And plus, we're talking about they broke up when I was fucking 8, right? So it's not like I had time to delve into each of their personalities, etc. But of course, obviously, the first time I saw the Beatles was on the Ed Sullivan Show without even knowing it, because it's hard to tell people now that are used to 400 channels and cable and etc. But at one point in time, everybody in the United States of America watched the Ed Sullivan Show, right? And the ratings that the top shows, not just Ed Sullivan, but anything, the top shows got back then are bigger than the Super Bowl gets now. So what was it? The night the Beatles debuted in 64 was 70 million people or 75 million people or maybe more watching it. I can't remember the statistics, but they were on the Ed Sullivan Show several times. That's been documented and in all the documentaries and etc.
And I think that's one of the reasons for the question, actually. Today is the anniversary of when the Beatles arrived in America.
There, February 1964, the start of the British invasion. So yeah, I saw him, and actually when I was a kid, and God damn it, I would still have this. I had two toy guitars when I was a kid. One, I've still got here in the office, and it's like the regular acoustic country music looking guitar that Randy Atcher played on Hayloft Hoedown here on WHAS television. And the other one was a plastic rock and roll guitar like the Beatles played, the fucking electric guitar. It had the weird shape and the whole 9 yards. And I loved that thing. My mom and dad even took home movies of me playing it and dancing with, now I've got to go back and look. I don't know if it was the Beatles on in the background on television. But I have a movie of me with the rock and roll guitar. I'm like 3 years old, playing and jumping around with somebody on TV. And then my cousin Larry, it was dark one night. He was staying at the house and he was going to the bathroom, and I'd leaned the guitar up next to the bathroom, but it fell over and he stepped on the neck and broke it in half. So anyway, so yes, I peripherally understood and knew who the Beatles were when I was 3-4 years old. As I got a little bit older, I remember my dad also was not a rock and roll fan. And he was born in 1914. So that's how I have so many mint condition fucking Rat Pack albums, Frank Sinatra, Dean Martin, show tunes from the 50s, mint condition, in the Cornette collection here. But he wasn't a fan of rock and roll because by the time the Beatles come along, he's 50. So he wouldn't let us listen to wacky radio in the car. WAKY was the rock and roll station. And he told me I believed this till I was like 11 or 12 and got more of a functional understanding of broadcasting, that he had the fucking button that connected to wacky radio in the car radio disconnected. So we couldn't listen to it.
What, really?
Yeah.
That's extreme.
Well, imagine when I found out years later that there was no button that you could disconnect like that. Because I even asked my mom one time when she came across a radio station I didn't like, I said, can you unplug that button? But anyway, but later on, as I got past 10 or 12 and started listening to music, then it was easier to get into the Rolling Stones and Led Zeppelin and the Beatles and etc. And even though I admire the Beatles for the revolutionary aspect of what they did and all of their songwriting and etc., I got to be honest and say I think the Stones and Zeppelin has a little edge on them just in terms of today's rock and roll. It stands up a little bit better in some cases today than the early Beatles stuff, which is still very poppy. But as far as a favorite Beatles song, I don't know. Yesterday, All My Troubles Seem So Far Away. Is it a ballad? Is it an up-tempo paperback writer? I don't know.
What about Mean Mr. Mustard?
Well, it was Colonel Mustard in the fucking drawing room with a candlestick.
You never got into punk rock or new wave?
Not particularly, because besides the music was not as appealing. I looked at the fucking punk rockers and go, what the fuck? This fucking ragtag band of delinquents and misfits, fucking straggly, pierced, unkempt, fucking street urchins, sort of like today's juggalos. Why would you want to be involved
like
in that fucking crowd?
It's nothing like that.
Yeah.
Great music, also, by the way.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's get another question here, Jim. This one was sent to CornyDriveThru@gmail.com from Douglas Hayde, Virginia Beach, Virginia. According to The Observer, Shawn Michaels is the day-to-day operator of NXT, not Vince. However, McMahon has final say. I know Jim's passionate anger towards Shawn is justified. Considering Shawn's past, it's remarkable he stepped in for Triple H and not cracked under the pressure as he did in the past. What are Jim's thoughts on the subject, on what Michaels has been able to do, considering what he has had to work with? And despite his personal feelings, Jim's opinion of Shawn Michaels currently.
Well, first of all, I'm not going to knock or praise anything he's doing in NXT because we don't know what he's done or tried not to have happen, what was forced on him, what was his own idea. As far as cracking under the pressure, I mean, he's not a goddamn just, especially now that I guess he's not on drugs like he was in the 90s. He's not just a basket case. He cracked under the pressure that was all on him to be the guy, the champion, draw the money. That's what he dropped the ball on in 1996 and 7. He wouldn't have cracked under the pressure if he had been in the back telling other people what to do, because then the pressure would have been on them out there. They're in the ones in the ring. They're under the lights, right? That's the pressure. I'm sure Shawn is somewhat immune to Vince screaming at him after all these years, as he does to some people. He's probably not getting that treatment. But I mean, here's the thing, though. It's interesting. Shawn's frame of reference of how to get guys over came in the 90s with all the guys, the gimmicks, the gimmick professions, or just the gimmicks. He understands that, and that's what Vince has kind of made NXT into, is the 90s version of the WWF, not the 80s where all the guys came from the territories and it still kind of resembled wrestling, but the 90s when they were just making shit up from scratch, characters, gimmicks, etc. So he's probably being told somewhat of who Vince wants pushed and kind of how he wants them to be portrayed, and he's doing the rest of it based on his frame of reference. Again, it's weird that I'm the guy that everybody that wants to critique me or criticize me, the first thing they say is, well, he's out of touch. He wants to do old-fashioned wrestling. That's the first one, right, from anybody who wants to say something about me. He's stuck in the past and he wants to do old-school wrestling, and that doesn't work anymore. I don't understand when everybody else that is what you see now is people taking off on, as Gomer Pyle used to say, imitating either ECW from the late 90s or the Attitude Era, or some of them want to imitate the fucking modern 2000s trampoline style of indie wrestling. Shawn's down there. That's his area of expertise, doing 90s style WWF, because that's when he was on top and figured in, and he knows what Vince likes. Everybody is doing the shit that they used to do whenever they were popular. My issue is that since I have in one way or another been popular or successful in the 80s, the 90s, and the 2000s, and for that matter, the 2000 teens in one thing or another, training, managing, promoting, booking, announcing, whatever, I don't do shit from one period. I do shit that makes sense and doesn't make wrestling look phony and silly. And if you can find someone who was born in the 90s that still can do kind of the sense of the 90s, well, that's great. Back 10 years ago, I was saying I want guys that were born in the 80s that can wrestle like they wrestled in the 80s. I don't want old people. I don't want old bullshit. I want shit that makes sense and shit that appeals to people without making the wrestling business look silly. And you found a lot of that some in the 90s, a lot in the 80s, a lot in the 70s, not so much since then. So the only people in this business that are not stuck in some era of the past are the people who didn't participate in any era of the past. They can't be stuck there because they don't even know how to do it. Does that make any sense?
And again, you really don't know what Shawn Michaels' exact tasks are right now. We do know that all of Triple H's guys were laid off, released, with the exception of Shawn Michaels, but maybe he was always more of a Vince guy than a Triple H guy anyway.
Well, and here's another thing. You don't know what any of these people who have been released or that are still there could do if it was up to them. or would do if it was up to them, or their product would look like if it was up to them. In a lot of cases, it'd still be the shits. In some cases, it'd probably be better. We won't know because, as I've said, if you're a world-class culinary trained chef and you go to work for the WWF, you're cooking with Vince McMahon's recipes. And if you don't put the right amount of salt or fucking oregano or whatever in, even if it tastes better to most people, Vince is going to tell you shorted the oregano. The creative team under Vince is working on somebody else's murder mystery. He's going to come up with the victim, and then you're supposed to write the book and figure out who did it. But he's already committed the crime. It's your job from there. So none of these people that have worked there, you really know what their shit would look like unobstructed, good, bad, or indifferent, because you never see it. So I'm sure there's been many people working in the creative periphery as agents, producers, ex-wrestling people, whatever the case, that if you said, okay, you're the booker, from now on, hire them, fire them, book them, you figure the finishes, whatever, shit would be a lot different than what they're doing for Vince, because they would be allowed to do what they want to do from scratch instead of hearing, okay, here's your parameters, here's who you've got to use, here's how I want them used, and here's the kind of things I want them to say. But you figure it out. Fuck. But Brian, it's always easier when you get the ingredients and you can do what you want. You can build what you want to build. You can make it your own. You can customize it without other people telling you what to do.
Yes, that's always a good thing. And of course, if you want to do that with your sofa or with your chair,
yes,
or other things that are like a sofa or a chair, there's a great place you could do that.
There's similar things to sofas and chairs, and you can sit on all of them, folks. And I've got good news for you. The people at Helix have left the bedroom. Actually, they've left it in good shape. It's been cleaned and dusted, and they'll be back shortly. But they have gone into the living room and started making sofas. And now, the new company that Helix has launched, called Allform, is already making the best sofas in the game. And here's the deal, and you know this, Brian. I'll let you illustrate this in just a moment. But you can customize these things. They use premium materials, a fraction of the cost of traditional stores, but you can pick the fabric, spill, stain, and scratch resistant. You can pick the sofa color, the color of the legs, the sofa size, the shape. They've got armchairs and love seats all the way up to an 8-seat sectional, and you can start small and then buy more seats later to add on if you want the sofa to grow and change with your home or your family, or, well, I guess if your family's growing and changing and hopefully it's not an infection, if there's green things growing and changing on your family's skin, I would advise you to consult someone. But Allform sofas also are delivered directly to your home with fast, free shipping. If you order from Jack's Furniture, it'll take you months to get there, and then you'd need somebody to come and carry it in, assemble it. Allform comes in a few weeks in the mail. You put it together yourself in just a few minutes with no tools needed. Some element of common sense and logic and intelligence is needed, but no tools. And you've got one. You had it in old last manor. You've moved it to the bigger new last manor. Have you reconfigured the thing, or is it still in the shape of a giant serpent across your living room?
No, we have reconfigured it. It is now in my library. So whenever I'm working late at night here in the office and I say, maybe I just want to lay down for a couple minutes, I've been passing out on that couch almost every single night. And then I never go back to work.
Well, Suzanne's been meaning to say something about your drinking habits.
No, it is an incredibly comfortable sofa. I literally sleep on it. There's enough space. I'm a big fan of it, and I may get another one for the house.
Well, you've already got one for the house, or do you have that one out in the garage now?
No, the one for the house is in the library.
Well, you say I may get one for the house. You get another one for the house.
Another one for that. Well, this one's mine. Yes. I'll get one for the house for everyone in the house.
Mine. You can't have it. It's mine.
That's right.
Well, folks, if you want a piece of furniture that you will be so attached to that you will kick your wives and children off the edge of a cliff rather than part with this thing.
I didn't say that.
Well, that's what you implied. Folks, don't worry about this now. It's if it sounds risky, if it sounds like something you're trying to get into you don't know about, you get 100 days to decide if you want to keep this thing. That is somewhere around 3 months, give or take. And if you don't love it, they will pick it up for free and give you a full refund. We deal with a lot of people that stand by their merchandise here. Allform are one of them, or many of them. They're one of the entities that stand by their products. Anyway, exclusive discounts for teachers, students, military, and first responders. Also, sex workers qualify. It is a something you can lay on, but if you're a teacher, a student, military, or first responder, you get a discount. Check at the website if you're a sex worker. They also offer financing and flexible payment plans, and the sex workers are flexible as well, so it works out real good there on the couch.
Will you stop with the sex workers?
I'm sorry, it's not work, it's play. Sometimes there is compensation. They even offer at Allform, I'm talking about, a forever warranty, like forever. If some way or another you buy one of these things and you will it to your descendants in 300 years, if some asshole sits down with a ray gun or a laser beam gun in his pocket and burns a hole in the couch, it's guaranteed. Go check out Allform. That's forever. ALLFORM.com/JCE, allform.com/JCE. They're offering 20% off all orders for our listeners at allform.com/JCE. Armchairs, love seats, couches, sofas. I'm telling you, they got if you want to put your ass on it, they got the market covered right here at Allform.
All right, well, let's continue covering the market with wrestling questions here on the drive-thru. This next one was sent to CornyDriveThru@gmail.com from Steve in Toledo. I have always been curious as to if Danny Davis was ever salty about the fact that the average pro wrestling fan equates his name more with WWE referee gimmick wrestler than with him. Considering the impact he's had on the business over the last 30-plus years, I think that would be kind of annoying.
Okay, I'd think that'd be kind of a flat ending to the question. I never heard my Danny Davis mention the other Danny Davis's name. I'm sure at the time that they were both in, because remember the WWF Danny Davis, and I guess for the younger listeners, Danny Davis was a referee in the WWF from like 85 to early 90s, that period. I could be off a year or two either way. He apparently went to the military school that Vince went to. He went to school with Vince, and he had been on the ring crew before he refereed. This was before I got there, but just going by what I was told. And then they decided to make him a lot of the ring crew guys became referees, and then they decided to make him we'll do the things they did. He was a heel referee, and he was with this guy and that guy, whatever the fuck. And the reason why, and I don't know the veracity of this, but the reason I always heard that he was employed in the wrestling business or with the WWF is because when he and Vince were in school, he took the fucking bump for something that Vince did, and they got caught, and he took the rap for it. And that was just locker room gossip. Who knows? But you know how Vince is, so it's not like it's hard to believe.
You take the bump for me. You save the burning tapes. You'll have jobs for life.
Yeah. But anyway, I mean, he's a nice guy, and I've met him a number of times, been around him. He's a nice guy. And that's his name. Apparently, I guess, Danny Davis, my Danny Davis, the Nightmare, the OVW Danny Davis, his real last name is Briley, Danny Briley. But honestly, that was kind of a bleh name in wrestling. And when he first started, I don't know whether he had any input in this or not, but they called him Danny Davis after his first couple of, matches where he did jobs on TV. And in Tennessee, Danny Davis was a big country music star with Danny Davis and the Nashville Brass back in the 50s and 60s. Maybe that's where it came from. I don't think that he was salty for a number of reasons. Number one, you got to remember that Danny, he worked Memphis, he worked Continental, and he worked Calgary. And the territories that he worked, not only the other Danny Davis never really appeared anywhere except the WWF. And the only time that he was really on widespread national TV was the last few years of the 80s when Vince spread out everywhere. But if you ask the wrestling fans in the Continental Territory or the Memphis Territory, or like I said, he spent several different runs in Calgary, they knew Nightmare Danny Davis as the Danny Davis. And the WWF fans knew Danny Davis, the referee, as Danny Davis. It wasn't a big deal. It's just now, in retrospect and in hindsight, with people who weren't there and who are covering all of the world of wrestling, reading historical things, it's confusing because there was two guys with the same name. It wasn't really at the time. There was clear separation between the two. Also, my Danny Davis doesn't give two shits or a French fried titty fuck if he ever is on television ever again, if he ever signs an autograph again, if anybody ever recognizes, he don't give a shit. The only time we used to have to really talk nice to him, I did, to get him to come out on OVW television. As like the big climactic blow-off loser leave town match with Doug Basham against the Damager. Right at the end of that, there had to be, for the story, for the product, there had to be reconciliation between Doug Basham and his uncle Danny Davis. So Danny came out and hugged Doug, and the place stood up and there were people crying. Or he would appear if there was a big charity function when we do the Crusade fundraisers, but he didn't want to be on his own TV. And what was it? Early 2000s when he got the developmental deal with TNA when they still had some money and they were doing that gut check thing. Because he was training, they brought him down to Florida. That's the only time Danny's been on television in the last fucking 25 or 30 years, besides anything on OVW, he was one of the judges in the gut check thing. And I talked to him one time. I said, what the fuck did they do to get you to go to Florida and agree to be on TV? And he said, well, they're paying me a lot of fucking money. And that's part of it. He didn't want to be on TV. Once he was retired and out of the ring, he was not glory happy in any respect. He could have easily, look at all the people that have done fan fests and conventions and signings. He could have been doing all that stuff for the last 20 years or whatever. It's not that he doesn't like the fans or that he doesn't like the boys, but that's, that part of his career he's done with. Danny Davis in Continental was the forerunner of guys who made a fortune on gimmicks. Especially with the Nightmare when he was a babyface with the mask deal or the stars, the makeup. He had his wife at the time would sew masks for the kids, and he'd sell autographed pictures and posters and everything in the world. And he made 4 times on gimmicks what he made wrestling in Continental during that time. But he's not interested in being a public figure anymore. He's always been happy doing what he was doing after he retired from the ring. So I seriously don't think he's lost any sleep over it.
Did you see recently that Memphis wrestler Ken Raper passed away?
Yes, the man with the unfortunate last name. Actually, I didn't even realize that during the late 80s, he got a run as an Indian in Puerto Rico. What was he, Chief War Eagle or something like that?
I didn't realize that either. No.
It was in his obituary. But Ken Raper was another way. He was a local guy in Memphis, and he wrestled on and off for probably 8 or 10 years, mostly on TV Saturday mornings. He got that one little thing where he and Robert Reed, who was another job guy who took over for me doing the photography when I left the territory. Robert Reed and Sam Lowe filled in that spot. They won the World Tag Team title from the Assassins. Roger Smith and Donnie Bass one morning on TV because the Fabulous Ones helped them. And that was seen as the ultimate in embarrassment when a job guy would beat an established guy. Now it happens on TV every week. And then, of course, they brought it back at the Coliseum on Monday night, and the Assassins kicked shit out of Reed and Raper and won the belts back, and then had their match with the with the Fabulous Ones, and did another angle to keep that program going. And I think he was a member of the King's Army, the softball team. Lawler had a softball team. He just quit, apparently, playing softball with this final season. He's had a softball team Lawler has in Memphis since the 70s. And Ken was on that for quite a long time, and just a nice guy. Just, I'm not going to say that he could have particularly gone a lot farther had he gone anywhere else. He'd had the little run in Puerto Rico. Let's face it, that was a time where that territory was in need of talent. But he was a good guy, and I guess he was 65. I can't believe he's older than me, but I guess he was, now that I think about it.
All right, Jim, our next question sent to CornyDriveThru@gmail.com from Adam Hamlin. Hi, Jim. Writing from Missouri.
That sounded like when you said his name, you threw up a little bit in your mouth. You had to take a pause. Adam Hamlin. Yeah.
Writing from Missouri, where I've recently been lucky enough to fall into a photographer position for a small promotion in Southern Illinois. Not wanting to seem and sound completely ignorant, but what would be the proper etiquette or code of conduct for behind the scenes? So far, the boys and women in the back seem to enjoy my company and work. I don't want to fuck that up. Any help is appreciated.
Well, I mean, Jesus Christ, trying to give that advice blind. I mean, we can cover the basics. Try not to tell anybody what they ought to be doing with their business, since you just started and they ought to know. Be polite to everybody. A photographer usually doesn't have a lot of heat because the guys want to get their pictures in either the magazines or the programs. For a small independent, the magazines such as, if one still exists, and one in England and one in this country, but the local programs, they may want their shit on the souvenir stand, so they want nice pictures. I think we're past the point. I had a few guys, Cowboy Frankie Lane was the biggest one, that would actually come and complain to me if I was at ringside and took a picture of them on defense instead of offense. In other words, if they were taking a bump or being thrown or slammed or whatever, don't take that. Well, goddamn. Then I wouldn't take half the pictures I take, right? So I just ignored him. I think everybody's past that. He says that they seem to like his personality and his work. I guess they probably like your photography. I'm sure you've got a nice personality, but just don't test that aspect of it very much, and mind your P's and Q's, and don't get in the way of the finish meetings. Don't suggest any angles until you've been there for 3 or 4 weeks. What else? What do you think, Brian?
He's been there for 3 or 4 weeks. He's a photographer. Yeah. Don't suggest any angles.
I know I'm being a smartass. Don't take the first 3 or 4 weeks before you start coming up with the angles. I mean, I don't know what to tell people anymore as far as what you and as Gary Hart told me that time, and I've retained this all these years, 37 years later. Repetition is the key when dealing with goofs.
Well, let's see if this next question is dealing with a goof. This was sent to CornyDriveThru@gmail.com from Nathan in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. Love the shows. One of my favorite stories.
Thank you very much, Nathan. I love your hot dogs.
No, you don't. See, I love Nathan's hot dogs. You're a liar and a pretender.
I like Nathan's hot dogs, but they're not as good as cheesesteaks.
Love the shows. One of my favorite stories that's been told repeatedly is the tale of Paulie dangerously allegedly meeting Jack Nicholson at the China Club in 1989. During the meeting, Jack apparently gave Paul the advice, "Watch out for the racket, kid." Paul was obviously a fan, as I recently watched an old clip of him wearing a Batman t-shirt during a segment of Funk's Grill on NWA Power Hour, also from 1989.
Is there a question here from the listener?
Jim tends to think Paul was telling one of his overly embellished tales. However, new evidence has come to light.
Oh, no.
That Jack Nicholson may have indeed been a wrestling fan. Below is a screen grab from Jack's official Facebook page. It's most certain that Jack has a team of people that tend to his social media. Yet I doubt they would post this without it having some air of truth. It's so ridiculous. What do you guys think? I noticed Paul Lee and Jim are absent from the list, and what I have here is from the official, allegedly the official Jack Nicholson Facebook page, a picture of Harley Race, Ric Flair, and John Cena. And it says, Jack Nicholson is a huge fan of professional wrestling. His all-time favorites are Harley Race, Ric Flair, and John Cena. Jim, being presented with this evidence, does it change you labeling Paulie a liar for the conversation with Jack Nicholson in the China Club?
Well, no, just because a blind squirrel finds a nut doesn't mean he regained his sight. Anything can happen. But is there documentation that you're looking at that is really from Jack Nicholson's Facebook page or whatever?
I have something here that says it's from Jack Nicholson's online. Wait, no, Jack Nicholson. Jack Nicholson online, but it does not have a blue check mark or anything that indicates it's certainly official, so I really don't know.
And I could even buy Flair and Harley Race because Jack Nicholson's older than I am, but where'd Cena come in? I mean, both of these things may be true, but I will just briefly again indicate or tell the story that Paul told me, and then you decide, because what Paul told me was this was back when we were doing the Midnight Angle. We were at TBS at Techwood Drive, the studios, not center stage, wasn't there yet. And everybody knew that Paul went home to New York for the weekends when he wasn't working, especially when we didn't have the managers on the road at that period of time. He was always, anytime he could get to New York, he'd go to New York. And he comes in one day at the taping, and as soon as I walk in, he grabs me, right? I can't even set my bag down. He said, "You'll never guess where I was over the weekend." "No, Paul, I never will." "The China Club." Okay, well, that makes sense. He, loves the China Club. That was the hot place. Paul always wanted to go to the hot places. I, meanwhile, would like to sit in the backyard and have a hot dog or a cheesesteak and watch fucking squirrels. But anyway, so then I said, well, that's good, Paul. You're at the China Club. Guess who I saw? I don't know, Paul. Jack Nicholson. Yeah, Harley is coughing like she's choking over this already over there. I got to give her a Benadryl. And I said, "You saw Jack Nicholson." "Well, that's good." He said, "Well, guess what he said?" I said, "Now, wait a minute, Paul. If Jack Nicholson spoke to you, now it's getting good." He said, "Oh, yeah." I said, "Well, what did he say?" He said, he walked over to me, put his arm around me and said, "Hey, kid, watch the tennis racket." Now, Paul, I can believe you were in the China Club. I can even believe that you saw Jack Nicholson at the China Club. But now you are asking me to believe that Jack Nicholson is currently watching TBS and is a fan of our angle. He said, "I swear on my father's life." Hey, God damn it. Now you are giving me the choice of deciding whether Jack Nicholson is a fan of our angle or you don't care whether your father lives or dies. And that's all the evidence that I've gotten to this day that conversation took place. But I guess stranger things have happened. It helped also, though, that Paul Lee often had run-ins with people that he did wonderful impersonations of.
Do you think maybe Paul has been unfairly labeled a liar over all these years, if in fact it all started with a meeting with Jack Nicholson that did happen?
Well, but then now, once again, we're going back to the blind squirrel theory. You're going to have to then try to tell me that every time that blind squirrel went out, he ran over a nut, but he still couldn't see. Just because it happened once doesn't mean it's going to happen a lot. I'm still firmly in the camp of, I wouldn't believe Paul Heyman if his tongue was notarized, but he's one of the great performers in the history of television.
Well, he always says nice things about you, but let's go on to our next question here, Jim.
You know, I tell you what, that Paulie, he's litigious.
Oh, we're going there.
He's very litigious. He sues people for a variety of things, whether he has any grounds to do it or not. That's how he's gotten away with a lot of things.
And that's why I totally think that the fact that he said the comment about his father, it may have to be true, because that would be the person who would sue for him.
Because his father was an attorney.
Yeah.
But he may or may not have wanted his father dead, because maybe he heard that there was this new attorney in legal school over in West Virginia that was going to be within 20 or 30 years, which is nothing to a vampire like Heyman, who's lived for thousands of years off the blood of younger people. It's nothing to him to wait 20 or 30 years until that lawyer gets out of legal school and he has set himself up as the most successful personal injury attorney in the whole state of West Virginia. You know who I'm talking about. That's who Paul Heyman would have hired back then. None other than...
Call Stephen P. News. If you need to sue. An outlaw mud show or two. Still to the rest.
Yes, folks, I'll tell you what, Stephen P. New has been around for a while, but not that long, because he's still a young, energetic man. He wasn't practicing law in the 80s or elsewise. I would have got away with a lot more things, but he's practicing law now, and not only that, but he's finished practicing, and he's really good at it. And now he's just doing it all across the country, and you can be a part of it, because some of the lawsuits now are being filed in several different states concerning the babies born addicted to opioids. The pharmaceutical companies lied to the doctors. Many people were affected, and now there's class action suits that Stephen is filing. The first suits have been filed, more to come in a variety of states across the country. You can be involved. It doesn't have to just be in West Virginia, and he's especially interested in finding the grandparents or foster parents or adoptive parents of kids that could have been born with that problem, because the chain of custody there, if they're not with the birth parents, sometimes information gets lost. So he wants to track those folks down. If you know anybody that's the grandparent, adoptive parent, foster parent, or just keeping an eye on some kid, you might want to give Stephen a call at 888-692-8084 or email at newlawoffice.com. Not only that, but Stephen, as we've mentioned, has helped a variety of the Cult of Cornette members with their problems. We read an email a couple of weeks ago from someone who called him with a question, and he called him back, because he does all this stuff personally, because Stephen is a freak of nature and never sleeps. But also, he's representing some folks in the pro wrestling genre and is getting into that more widely in the year 2022, and big things are going to come from that. We're going to have some announcements also, but one way or another, whether you're a civilian, whether you're someone in the wrestling industry, or whether you're just out there not knowing where to turn because the legal system in this country has put you under their thumb and is grinding you under your thumb, under their thumb, you need somebody to take their middle finger and pry that thumb off of you, and that would be Stephen P. New at newlawoffice.com, 888-692-8084. Like I said, if you've been charged with sodomy, he'll get it reduced to tailgating. If you have a problem, he's got the solution. Stephen P. New.
All right, Jim. Well, let's go to our next topic here. And this is something I saw on Twitter the other day. Alan Blackstock, or on Twitter, Alan_cheapshot, posted a thread. I don't know if you would have seen this. Glassdoor reviews by former WWE employees / contractors.
I must admit, I saw this, but I had seen it before. It's not ancient. It's not like from 30 years ago, but it's been out there. I've seen it, but for the purpose of this program, we have not talked about it. So continue.
Are you familiar with Glassdoor?
Well, no, I wasn't familiar with that, but I understand the concept is that people who have worked in a specific place will give their thoughts and impressions on what the company is like to work for, or so that other people looking for jobs won't fall into a bad situation. Is that kind of a summary?
Or potentially tells people about a good situation, and it could be current or former employees, and it's all
Right.
anonymous.
Right. Anonymous.
Anonymous.
It's anonymous.
Well, I nominate this first one to start with. You could be released at any time. There's no benefits, no health insurance, and the contracts were extremely one-sided. Sounds like a wrestler there.
Well, I was about to say, now hold on here. That is a wrestler. Because the one thing I do know from my, what was that? Was it 2 weeks or 4 weeks as a WWF employee? You get benefits and insurance and things like that. Now, I don't know how it stacks up to other companies in the regular business world because I've never worked for any of them either. But yeah, you did get, if you were an employee, you get insurance and some of those benefits that real jobs apparently give people. So that must have been a wrestler, right? Because you can be released at any time. You get no benefits and you're pretty much fucked. And the contracts are one-sided.
Culture can be toxic at times. Long hours, not great pay, work on holidays.
That can be anybody. Anybody in the whole company, down to Howie the mailroom guy.
Terrible morale. Constant feeling that your job may not be there the next day. No work-life balance. I'm sorry to laugh about this. No one cares about you. Upper management has zero regard for your time. You might expect to sit in the office waiting to be called into a meeting until 9:30 p.m., only for it to be canceled at 9:29 p.m.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and again, there's nothing surprising, except honestly, in the 90s when I was there in the office and interacting not only with the wrestling, the talent relations people, but the rest of the office employees, studio people, whatever, the morale wasn't bad. They had the deal where Vince cut the wrestling people's pay in 95 that, pissed JJ off, caused Al Hayes to retire, the whole 9 yards. But as far as the employees, and especially everybody at the studio, everything that was said in those remarks you just read, it was true, except the morale wasn't bad. And most people enjoyed working there and enjoyed the people. There's nice people working there. There was only a few pricks. That, what the fuck was his name? The merchandise guy that went to prison. God damn it. But anyway, like that, but most of the people were nice. And especially the studio technician, the employees at the TV studio, a lot of them were young, especially the editors and the assistant producers and et cetera. And they weren't married, didn't have families. Some of them didn't. They'd sleep on the couch because they'd be there so long. They wouldn't want to leave and go to wherever their home was. Nobody could afford to live in Stamford because they all had to live away from the office. Because if I had to live 30 miles away, I don't know what the assistant, fucking floor manager over at the studio was making, but a lot of times they'd just sleep on the couch and be there all the time, but that was what it was.
Overworked staff. Major decisions are made last minute, literally day of. You have to be quick with the last minute changes or all hell breaks loose. High stress. Upper management has no idea what some of the departments actually do or how each department interacts with one another. Employees are nice people, though. Advice to management. So much damage has been done to the current staff. I feel sorry for the employees that are working there now. The organization is short-staffed, and there are people doing 3 to 4 other jobs aside from their own. Not cool.
I can't argue with anything that was said there either. But again, that's the thing when you've got a wrestling promotion that somehow suddenly, like Vince did, gets big and has to employ civilians not in the wrestling business full time. and they go in and take a job like it's working for any other company or any other television production or anything, and they're mortified. But I'm not surprised at anything, because if to the days of the territories, if you were important in any way to your wrestling promotion, you did 5 jobs.
Unfortunately, it's a toxic work environment. Due to poor headquarter location, they cannot hire top talent, so they too often promote from within and hire their local friends. This leaves teams with people who lack the skills to do the job, which inhibits progress. Leadership.
Well, wait, hold on. They're in fucking Stamford, Connecticut. They're right next to New York City. They're not in Wartburg. What does that mean?
If you want New York talent, go to New York, quite frankly. I don't think Stamford's a great location for a major entertainment company in terms of wanting top talent. You need to get people who want to move to Connecticut, move to Stamford.
Well, who the fuck wants to move to Connecticut? Who the fuck wants to live in New York?
More people than want to move to Connecticut.
Good Lord. All right, keep going. To me, Stamford, Connecticut is about as big a fucking city as I ever wanted to fucking motivate in on a regular basis.
Leadership turnover is very high, causing constant instability and lack of representation for teams. Overall, people can be negative and disgruntled because they are affected by the lack of company support and a toxic culture. Keep seeing this word toxic over and over.
Yeah, hey, I'll tell you something else, too. If you're disgruntled, well, you ought to go in and talk to somebody and get back gruntled.
Diverse? Not so much. The environment was very political, and you could hear people talk about you if you don't fit in. It was a passive-aggressive vibe I got. If you're not a naturally extroverted person, this is not the place for you.
Boy, I can agree with that. And I get the passive-aggressive thing is when people say things that verbally could be considered nice, but the way that they say them or the place that they put them in, they're a fucking snide comment, right? I could say a lot of business people, a lot of people outside the wrestling business that are just in regular business are not used to having heated, spirited, vehement, potentially profane conversations with each other. And so they kill each other with the kindness and then cut their nuts off behind their back. But I can see that the wrestling folks, and Vince encourages that, not for people screaming and yelling and snatching each other around the neck, on a regular basis, but he encourages people to be extroverted and fucking join in whatever the fuck. And the wrestling people had no problem with that. Hey, motherfucker. Hey, fuck you. Now, fuck you. Oh, really? Well, okay. I guess it's not so bad. Okay. Hey, let's go down to the commissary. Normal people don't talk like that.
No merit. Terrible pay. No direction. Senior management is a joke.
God damn.
Everyone in charge is afraid of Vince McMahon and losing their jobs. At times, you may have to wear more than one hat. Pay for data scientists is below industry average.
I don't even know what a data scientist is or what the industry pay would be, but I can say, again, people that don't want to be in the wrestling business for their entire lives and aren't like there because it's the wrestling business and they just got a job, they probably think that a lot of those people are fucking lunatics. And I can see all of these things being said, and everybody was scared of Vince 30 years ago, but they weren't scared like cowering because Vince didn't go off on tangents where everybody was just fired and departments were closed and all the shit that goes on these days. If you were there for a while, as long as you didn't kind of fuck something up and get caught at it. But I guess now they're just scared when Vince walks down the hall, he might point and say, you're fired.
Do not work here. Toxic and horrible. Unpredictability. No/limited holidays off. I've been called into work on Christmas and during my vacation, HR is a scam and are corporate robots.
God damn.
Nice, though. Communication is all over the place. This next person just says, no free drinks in the lobby. I don't know if that's a legitimate complaint.
What the fuck?
Stress can be overwhelming at times.
What the fuck? Does everybody get free drinks in the lobby at everywhere else they work? I've never heard that as a critique. I've been in the lobby a few times. Normally I went in from the parking garage, but I've been in the lobby a few times. They didn't have any snacks or drinks or a drink machine or anything there.
Always on. There are 3 weekly live shows and 1 monthly pay-per-view, so there is no downtime. This is felt most acutely among roles that are directly involved with the creation and production of shows, but it permeates the whole culture. Extremely poor management culture. The family has created a culture where mid to senior level staff spend the majority of their time and effort managing up and CYA rather than focusing on the work.
What? Okay, this is business lingo. I know cover your ass, but what is managing up?
Managing up, I used to work with a guy at Sony who had a great reputation for being really good at managing up and really bad at managing down. He did a great job of kissing the ass of every executive above him and a horrible job of treating every single person below him.
I see.
General culture of suspicion, lack of trust in employees. For example, this is new. For example, when employees were put on temporary furlough during the pandemic, all system access was cut off and they were notified via text that they had been furloughed. There was a clear assumption that furloughed employees who were going to return as employees would try to steal or otherwise damage the company if allowed the access to systems. There is no career development. Advancement is based on tenure until one senior director or VP level. It's worded a little weird. At which point promotion and tenure are determined solely by one's navigation of company politics. What are your thoughts on the idea of the executives there only being able to manage up and not manage down?
Well, I mean, they've got a lot of new people since I've been there. And honestly, my experience wasn't like a normal employee, somebody in accounting or somebody in merchandising. Like I said, I was one of the wrestling people. And we were neither fish nor fowl at the office. We had offices in Titan Tower, but if Vince wanted us to write at his house, that's what we do. Or we were on the road sometimes with the shows, the TV tapings. So me, Bruce, JR, JJ, when he was there, any of the people that came from the wrestling business didn't experience a lot of this. And honestly, we couldn't identify it if we were looking at it. And my thing was always, I've told you, I wasn't scared. I wanted to do well. I wanted to please Vince, right? It's my job. I've committed to this. I've given my word. But anytime Bruce said, get a passport, we're going to do TV in fucking Kuwait. Well, let me know if it's a deal breaker, because I got to sign my lease here or elsewise go back to fucking Tennessee. I still own a house down there. I ain't going to fucking Kuwait. Or when they broke my windshield, I just went home for 3 days till I cooled off so I wouldn't yell at anybody. And then JR called and said they'd pay for the windshield. Okay, I'll come back. It was always like, I'm not nervous about the things that the normal employees would be nervous about because I'm a wrestling guy and I'm not wired that way. But I can see where it's just, you don't know what the fuck's going on. And if you've just wandered in there and you've never had a background in the wrestling business and you try to get a job there, it's probably like working in a fucking booby hatch or a lunatic asylum. But again, all I can say is 20-something years ago, people were happy there, even though they worked long hours and all those other things were true. It wasn't bad morale. Nobody was anxious to fucking leave, or at least saying that in public. And I think I would have got that idea. A lot of people would come in with joy on their face. Oh, look what we're doing. But, yeah. But the bigger the company gets and the more people there are and the more new people they brought in that don't have, a lot of those people don't know shit from apple butter about the wrestling business either. They're trying to do what you said, cover their own ass and act like they know what they're doing. And the people underneath them don't.
Well, the other thing is, there are probably people posting on here, in fact, I would bet on it, who have no idea about wrestling, even though they work there, and don't want to ever know about wrestling. They're talking about an actual job in the office, just in a business office, just in an entertainment company.
Yeah, that's got to be insane for normal people to get a job in the WWF and think it's going to be run like a normal business. It's wrestling. It's still, that's the thing. It's still wrestling. They just pretend like it's not, and they do a rotten job of presenting it, but it's still all the things that came from the wrestling business. So yeah, all that shit's going to go on.
And by the way, this thread just goes on and on and on. People destroying the company, hating the HR department specifically.
Well, the HR department was this two nice women 25 years ago. I'm sure they're probably retired now. They were in their mid-30s. Oh. So I'm sure they're gone. I won't even bring up their names.
HR department looks the other way and does nothing with so many abuse claims.
But again, I didn't have any reason to ever. The only time I interacted with the human resources department was that time they made me an employee, until the Ed Kaufman, the lawyer, found out I was still taking bumps on shows and said, well, you can't be an employee. Fine, then unemploy me. But that during the time I talked to the two ladies in HR, and they were wonderful. I don't know anything about abuse claims, because that's the thing. In those days, nobody was being abused. I wasn't being abused. Maybe every once in a while they'd rib me at the shows, but so I never had to deal with the human resources department or human relations or whatever it is. But I'll say this about the way that they've done now. Remember, they've not only said that they fired those people over text and they wouldn't let them back in to get their shit, but they've also, didn't they walk? Was it Canyon Seaman or was it somebody else that they walked them off the property? And they've had stories where they've let people go and actually had security walk them out and not let them go back into the office or whatever. We've heard a few of those.
And that happens in corporate America.
Well, no, that's one way that the WWF has changed. Think about this. When I was leaving to come back to Louisville for OVW, I told JR when I pitched him the idea, as I said, I'm leaving one way or another. I'm going home because there was nothing that I had left for me to do up there, and I was fucking at the end of my rope, right? So I said, pitch this, and then we'll all be happy. But I told JR in these exact English words, if I leave Connecticut to move to Louisville without this deal in place, I just want to let you know, JR, because we've been friends, I'm going to take a bat and hospitalize Vince Russo my last day here. Ah, corny, come on. No, I just want to let you know. That is my plan. And then, of course, it happened that we had the OVW deal, so I could leave with the deal. I didn't want to screw that up, penalize Danny Davis. So for my everlasting regret, I didn't take a fucking ball bat to Vince Russo. However, the point I'm making is, when I left, I got going away cards that I still have. I found those in my file also, signed by everybody in talent relations and everybody at the TV studio. I went in and said goodbye to everybody, got all the stuff out of my desk in the office. There wasn't that much. I hadn't made it a point to fucking be there for a long time. I took the 18 by 24 framed portrait of Vince McMahon that was in my office when I moved into it out with me, and it's hanging on the wall here, his announcer picture with the gobsmacked face.
Wait, hold on. When you moved into the office, there was a framed Vince McMahon photo already in there?
The only thing in my office in the talent relations department on the 4th floor was a desk, a chair, and behind the door, when it opened, it was leaned an 18 by 24 full color photo of Vince framed in a white frame. He's got his announcer outfit on from the 80s, and he's doing the, oh my God face. And I said, that's what he looked like the day he found out I was going to come to work for him. So when I saw it, I said, when I leave here, whenever it is, I'm taking that picture with me. And I did. So I went in, got my goodbye cards, said goodbye to everybody, got my shit, carried that goddamn portrait out bigger than Christmas, and went on my merry way after having told the head of talent relations that if things didn't go my way, I was going to take a baseball bat to another motherfucker that worked there. And now they let people go and then walk them out so they don't have a chance to do anything. The culture has changed. think one of the problems was they all liked me better than they liked Shitstain, so they didn't necessarily complain about it.
I'll end with one final one here. Do not make them mad. Jesus.
You won't like them when they're mad. See, I'm telling you, when you think about it, the people that are successful surviving the WWE hierarchy are all the people that either came from the wrestling business or have the mentality that they would have fit in the wrestling business. Just like, I don't give a fuck. If you say something to me crossways, I'm going to smack the shit out of you, and don't fuck with me. And those people, usually get along okay, or at least last a lot longer than the people that are like, oh, I wish you wouldn't fire me because I really need this job. If that's one thing I can tell you, Vince McMahon does not respect is whether or not you need the job or not, or whether or not if you grovel, you're fucking done. Remember everybody said fire up at him when he's blistered one of the younger guys. The veterans will say, he challenged you to a fight, tell him, okay, we're going to go. Where do you want to start? Or elsewise he'll lose all respect for you. If that's another, all the wrestlers doing, oh, I'm so glad to be here. It's been my lifelong dream. Yeah, he'll wipe his ass on your lifelong dream. If you go in there and say, I'm going to draw you some fucking money because I'm the best in the business, and you can back it up, that's when you're in.
Well, we are out. And with that, the drive-thru is closed. Oh, man. All right. Well, we'll be back this weekend.
That's a deep subject, as Mama Cornette used to say.
We'll be back this weekend on the Jim Cornette Experience, wherever you find your favorite podcasts. And, of course, next week, right back here on the drive-thru. Once again, wherever you find your favorite podcast. Subscribe today to the official Jim Cornette YouTube channel. Full episodes, clips of episodes, omnibus collections, all with the very popular and exclusive Travis Heckel artwork. Check it out today, the official Jim Cornette YouTube channel. To get access to classic episodes of the drive-thru and the experience going back to the beginning in 2013, almost 10 years ago, my God.
Oh my gosh.
Become a patron today at patreon.com/Cornette. For $5 a month, you get access to the archive. Once again, patreon.com/Cornette. You can follow Jim on Twitter at @TheJimCornette. You can follow me on Twitter at GreatBrianLast. You can hear me on the 605 Superpodcast at 605pod.com, or available wherever you find your favorite podcasts. Don't forget about Cornette's Collectibles at JimCornette.com. It is almost time, Jim.
It's almost time. Saturday, February 12th, the store will be opening, with the hope being that the customers will get their merchandise so much more quickly, with the feather bottoms assisting me.
At JimCornette.com. The drive-thru is brought to you by the Law Office of Stephen P. New, 888-692-8084. Get even with Stephen at newlawoffice.com. But until this weekend on The Experience, and next week right back here on the drive-thru, for Jim Cornette, I'm the Great Brian Last. Tally-ho!